The Norris Group proudly presents our 13th annual award-winning black tie event, I Survived Real Estate. Industry experts join Bruce and Aaron Norris to discuss perplexing industry trends, head-scratching legislation, and opportunities emerging for real estate professionals headed into 2021. All proceeds from the event benefit Make-A-Wish and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. The Norris Group would like to thank the following platinum partners: Norada Real Estate Investments, San Diego Creative Investors Association, the Outspoken investor Tony Alvarez, Wilson Investment Properties, Think Realty Magazine, and Realty 411. We'd also like to thank our gold sponsors, Seven Figure Flipping, Inland Valley Association of Realtors, Keller Williams Corona, Keystone CPA Inc., Brisas Escrow, Leivas Tax Wealth Management, In a Day Development, NorCal REIA, NSDREI, Pasadena FIBI, Real Wealth Network, SoCal Cash Flow, Spinnaker Loans, and uDirect IRA.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 13th annual I Survived Real Estate. My name is Aaron Norris, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening, and thank you for being here tonight. Typically, we'd be seeing you all in person, dressed to the nines at the Nixon Presidential Library. White House Catering would have wined and dined us. MTV would have produced a glorious event at the East Room replica of the White House, and a lineup of national speakers would be sharing the night, giving us their insights and joining us on stage live. Well, early summer, it was clear that we had to make a shift. We started I Survived Real Estate in 2008 during the peak of the financial fallout to celebrate an industry that was going through a lot of change and to celebrate an industry in decline and a lot of change. And it felt like 2020, this was needed more than ever. There's lots of risk, there's lots of uncertainty, and our industry is thriving when a lot of other sectors in the economy are really faltering and struggling. So I Survived Real Estate this time is in two sessions. This week is California's Residential Town Hall. We've brought together some of our biggest supporters and experts from all over the state of California to discuss what's at risk for our industry, disruptions that is changing our work, and how politics at the local, state, and national levels could impact what we do. Next week, after the presidential election, we bring back our national, commercial, and town hall. Not bring back, we introduce it. So 2 nights. We purposely planned it after the election because depending on who becomes president could change a lot of things in our industry. And we thought that that was really important. And everybody on that panel participates in a different real estate sector. All are involved in very different states all over the country. Some are involved in commercial, some are wholesalers and do volume flipping. Should be very interesting. So they'll be sharing with us a lot of information and what they see coming up for 2021 with the knowledge of who is going to be, hopefully we'll know who's president at that point with that information. So next week, we will announce our grand total. We are extremely close to the $1 million mark raised for charity since we started this event in 2008. And I would just sincerely like to thank everybody who's been part of this event, whether you've been in the audience, a longtime sponsor. When we produce the video, it will be the grand deep voice gentleman who produces that sound for us to give them proper celebration, because we really appreciate your help. 100% of what we raise actually goes to Make-A-Wish and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. If you've been invited by one of our generous sponsors tonight and you feel inspired, please go to isurviverealestate.com and hit that video button, and you'll be able to find out how you can give. Later, if you're watching this on Amazon Prime, YouTube, or listening to this on the podcast, please do the same. isurviverealestate.com, and you can find out how you can give, but you can also find out how you can watch the video. You can find out we'll be producing some kind of program like we usually do, and you can find all that there. And of course, the donations this year are tax deductible as always. First bit of business tonight, I will show a brief clip of what brings us all together, and then I'm going to introduce you to Gloria Crockett with Make-A-Wish. Give me just a second. It'll be wonderful to edit this out later. Hang on.
Your wish to have a gaming computer was granted?
What do you think?
Firemen are dropping a package from way up high.
Gloria, thank you so much for being here today, and for being such an incredible partner. Your team has been so awesome. What some people don't realize is that you work so closely with the Norris Group, making sure that 100% of all the money raised actually goes directly to charity. So just thank you very much. You're in your first year as being CEO. You're going into your second year, and a pandemic, this must be a challenging time. So thank you for being here, and we'd love to hear more about Make-A-Wish.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Aaron. Excuse me, I just got a little bit of a frog in my throat right then. So you guys saw that amazing video, and I want to share with you guys how important it is to have hope, because hope is truly essential. And what we've been doing with COVID, with our children that are critically ill between the ages of 2.5 and 18, has been different this last, 6 or 7 months. And it's going to continue to be different for the next 6 or 7 months. But what I can say is that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that wishes come true. And I want to say, first of all, thank you to each and every one of you for all that you're doing to make sure that these wishes come true, because it's so vital and part of the recovery for those children that are sick. So we've been around since 1983, our chapter here in Orange County and the Inland Empire. And the different types of wishes that we've provided are I wish to have, I wish to give, I wish to meet, I wish to go, I wish to be. And I want you guys to take a moment. I know that we're trying to be as interactive as possible when we're having different type of Zoom meetings. So I want you guys to close your eyes. I want to tell you about a wish that recently happened. So think about this. There's a little boy who's really sick. He's on his way to have his wish, but he doesn't know it. His wish is to have a blue Lamborghini and to have his dad drive in it. So they pull up to the montage. The little boy's asleep in the back of their van. Now I want you to open your eyes. And he opens his eyes to a blue Lamborghini. How amazing is that? So open your eyes. Imagine that you're seeing a blue Lamborghini. And that's exactly what Omar got to see. And it's because of individuals like you that wishes are able to come true. So a huge thank you to the Norris Group. You guys are absolutely amazing. I've loved getting to know you over the year. I think I may have been on a whole 3 weeks the last year's event. But Bruce, Aaron, Joey, the whole team, thank you for all that you do. I Survived Real Estate. It's a phenomenal event. And I want to say that we've been together working in partnership since 2008. And you guys, it's amazing. It's almost $1 million to support our community. And Make-A-Wish just wants to say a huge thank you for our partnership since 2012 in receiving almost $400,000 in support of making wishes come true. So thank you. You guys have a fabulous event. And I appreciate you inviting us in to share a little bit more about our mission to treat those individuals, those kids between the ages of 2.5 and 18 with a wish of a lifetime who are dealing with a critical illness. So have a great event.
Thanks, Gloria. Oh, if you are in Riverside and would ever like to stop by the Norris Group office, we have hallways of all the plaques that we typically have, and I would love you to come and take pictures with them. It's a lifelong work. It's been an honor and just been really fun. So The sponsors here tonight, I just really appreciate you and your continued support for this event. It's just not possible. Our community has just been really awesome over the years, and I appreciate it. With that, I am going to officially hand the reins over to somebody that has been in the business for almost 40 years as a real estate investor, builder, a hard money lender. He hosts the Norris Group's weekly award-winning podcast and takes great joy in charts, yellow lining, real estate research papers, and legislation, regulation, and does his very best to advocate for an industry he loves very much. Joining us all the way from Florida tonight, 3 hours later, Bruce Norris. Hey, Dad.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
I am good at the Norris Group, hanging out. I think there's some people who think I've gone away now that I'm full time with Property Radar, but I'm just undercover in the background at the Norris Group. So I'm still here. Yes, full time Property Radar during the day, and we're about to go national. It's very exciting, living my best life. But over the last few weeks, you've been interviewing the Pastroni winners. If you could sum up some of the advice and some of the things that they've been saying over the last couple of weeks, what would you say?
I think it's what's common to all of those people was their reputation is spotless, that they conduct their business in an honest manner, and that allows them to do multiple transactions with the same families for decades. And that's why we created the award, was to honor those people in our industry that not only had the ability to do the business, but did it in such a way that it was honorable to such a great extent that when they taught people, they also taught that piece of it. And that's awesome.
We've even had some of the longtime favorite guests. Doug Duncan's been on the radio show, Sean O'Toole. Real estate seems to be faring pretty well, consider all things being considered. How are you feeling about real estate now that you're parked in Florida?
Well, as you know, we're building homes, and I would say the average length of time for us to sell a home is about 20 hours. I mean, honestly, it's so fast. So did I think this would occur? No. And so it's going to be very interesting to hear the comments tonight of all these different people from different areas. Because in 2019, at the end of 2019, we had the best set of charts and no movement in price. 3 months later, we start a pandemic, and now we're off to the races. So if I'm the only one scratching my head, then that's okay. I'll learn from the rest of them. But I'm surprised at what's gone on. And I think I was thinking about it today. Of course, I knew we were going to talk about it a little bit. I think some of it might be you have reduced inventory because somebody just refied their house at 2.5 and they say, I'm staying. So I think you might have reduced inventory for that reason. What was really interesting is when the pandemic started, listings got pulled off the MLS because I think everyone thought, okay, well, this is going to be a price damage and I'm not going to participate in it. So you had a lot of listings come off. I don't know that they've ever gone back on. But certainly I think California has about 2 months supply, which is for California about as low as it gets. And so we have off to the races pricing, very affordable, affordability, if you will. I think it's 32 or 33%, but all that was in place in 2019 with no results. So I'm excited to hear all these smart people help me understand what the heck's going on.
You've been threatening to move to Florida for years, and in July, you took all of 30 days to pick up and just leave us behind. What made you finally decide to pull that trigger?
I think honestly, it was something that my wife was concerned about California. And so I took that to heart. As you know, that's one of my main things in life is to put a smile on my wife's face. So as far as the economics of it, I was fully involved in saying that was a great idea because I've already invested most of my money in Florida. And so I was already happily there. I liked the product that I had and all that. Of course, very big thing saying goodbye to friends and family, but there's a plane. I'll be there next week and we can do, and the Norris Group is still thriving and still doing fine. And now we're doing business on the East Coast.
I'm going to ask you one question because I think it's important to frame tonight. I get most of these questions from realtors, but I think we should cover it. Would you buy a piece of real estate in California today?
Sure. If I was going to live in California, I'd rather own a home. And if I was going to borrow money, I think I'd rather borrow it in this in this year than any other year.
So you still
sure,
believe in home ownership?
absolutely. That's a very, very important thing to me, as you know.
I do, and it's important to cover. We're all we love this industry, and it's important. And I know we're going to be talking a lot about how crazy it is right now. What are some things that you would love to hear tonight?
One thing I'd like to bat around, and I'm glad you brought it up, is how important real estate ownership is that I think our industry has to figure a way how to reach across the aisle to the have-nots. And one of the ways you can do that, and we have a voice, you have a voice, Sean O'Toole has a voice. A nothing down loan program would probably make a ton of sense right now. We always talk about affordable housing. We don't need to lose $100,000 a house. We have 2.5% interest rates. That's affordable housing. All across the country, they don't have $700,000 median house price. They have $250,000 median house price. Match a 2.5 mortgage with that. Put a nothing down mortgage on whatever your failure rate. Here's the big problem. Everyone says, okay, well, that's going to create tons of foreclosures. Well, just have a different foreclosure process for that loan program, period. One foreclosure process for all 50 states. If you're delinquent on your payment for 6 months, it goes to trustee sale. The opening bid is the interest payment, never becomes an REO. Somebody buys it for 6 payments. If the overbid comes, then the people that were in it get it, fine. But I think we have to have real estate be part of the solution. Aaron, as you know, ownership was a big deal to me, really big deal. I still remember the emotion I felt when I was 21 years old, mowing my grass on a Saturday. And I actually teared up while I was doing it because I realized I owned a house, and I felt like a man for the first time. That's how impactful that was to me. And so I think the way society is right now, I think we better reach across the aisle and let people have a chance. Because once you have equity, as this stuff starts, as your loan starts paying down, as your payment is less than rent, you have spendable money, and eventually you get some equity and you can start being entrepreneurial. And I think that's what people need that aren't there. So I think our industry collectively ought to maybe break some rules and say, you know what, we're going to take a risk and let people in that we haven't before.
Amen to that one. Well, shall we get started?
Absolutely.
Let's do this. All right. First up in the hot seat, Paul Herrera in the Inland Empire. How you doing?
Hey, Aaron. Good. How are you doing?
I am so grateful you're here. You do a lot of work in the Inland Empire, in the real estate advocacy and governmental affairs. You've been in the industry, in the public relations industry for a really long time, and I am very interested to hear what's going on. We're going into an election. There's quite a few things at stake here in California. The mic is yours.
Thanks, Aaron. This has just been a year that if you gave me all of the factors that went into this year and said, now tell me what's going to happen, I couldn't put together the outcome of the last 10 months. I think Bruce is right on with this uncertainty. And because of how different this year has turned out from what you might have guessed by seeing what's there, it's very difficult to look out 6 or 8 months with a lot of confidence and say, I know what's going to happen going forward. I think all of us are not just living this in a professional manner, we're living this in a personal manner and seeing it, how it impacts our day-to-day lives. I'm actually right now standing in a home we bought in San Diego that we're starting to move into. I've got my place in Riverside still. So I'll apologize for being a little underdressed. All of my dress clothes are back in Riverside in the closet. And the only button-up shirt I found in my closet here is a silk burgundy shirt that I'm forbidden from putting on and showing to anybody, apparently. Teresa won't let me. I'm so proud of it, though. So we actually bought this house. We went into contract to buy this house on March the 6th. And a week later, COVID hits in a way that we finally have to recognize. And I think I had my last in-person meeting, a business meeting, on Friday, March the 13th. Friday the 13th of March was my last in-person meeting. And we didn't know whether we should go through with purchasing this house in San Diego or not. We didn't know what was going to happen. But there was this blip of interest rates in which that weekend we got a 2.85% interest rate. And a few days later, it was like 3.4%. And the owner essentially said, I want to get this done. So we got the deal done, and we couldn't turn away that 2.85, given that this is a house we plan to be in forever. And we went through that whole process. We closed in 30 days as we watched so many items of uncertainty start to hit the industry. I mean, you look at this year, when January comes around, we have a very strong economy. The state budget is $20-30 billion in surplus. The governor and legislature is trying to figure out where to spend all this extra money that they hadn't planned on collecting. We're looking at trying to tackle some big problems in housing affordability, and they're trying to figure out, how many things can we get done with a strong economy at our back. And then by the end of March, we're just trying to figure out the depth of the fall and what that's going to mean to the economy and to our ability to maintain basic things that are going to have to take place. Ben Benoit and I, starting, I don't know, probably March the 20th, are starting to field all kinds of issues that we had never dealt with before in the Inland Empire. Rent control initiatives, eviction moratoriums. Aaron, you were part of many of those discussions in some of the cities in our area. Cities that had never, raised a thought about placing burdensome restrictions on landlords saw massive need. And, you can understand the reason, because you have, COVID forcing people home and away from their jobs and away from their incomes at the same time that, landlords are in the very same place where, their income's threatened, and possibly this might be their income that threatens so much that they've worked for over the years. On my side, we didn't know at the end of March how real estate transactions were even going to happen. There was no exclusion that allowed real estate practitioners to go out and do anything, put up a yard sign, show potential buyers through a home, draw up title documents, home inspections, repairs. And I had to map out the entire process from listing appointment to final closing documents and try to figure out a way to put together a solution for each piece of it. And then in mid-April, we got essential industry designation that worked out a lot of those issues. But for a month there, we just didn't know how that was going to work. We had to troubleshoot so many things that I'd never even thought about before. I do work in the Coachella Valley with the California Desert Association of Realtors. There's a lot of foreign buyers and owners that are there. And I got a call one day saying, hey, how do we get documents notarized? I've got a Canadian seller. They can't cross the border. The embassy's closed. They normally would get them notarized at the embassy, but the embassy's closed. So what now? And we found a couple of ways to work through that. We found that you could put it together with Canadian notaries through some registry process and in the mail. We found a way of using online notaries through Texas. We just had to figure out some way of getting through item A or item B that would be acceptable to the recorder's office or to whatever agency we're trying to work with. That's been 2020. It's been a year of adapting to very difficult circumstances that we have to find a way to address. But in the middle of all that, as this is taking place and as we're trying to get through the week and get through the month, there are systemic problems that were there when the year started that will be with us when the year ends. And I think the most powerful one is what Bruce is talking about with respect to the haves and have-nots in housing and how that's changing the politics and our ability to do simple problem solving. People look at polarization and they're rightly very worried about how much we've turned into a left and right clash as a country. And that has really undermined our ability to do basic problem solving on things that we work on. there are a number of issues where we can't get either side to come together to some kind of practical agreement, because both sides believe that they don't have to give up anything when you get to the extremes. And unfortunately, the extremes aren't that extreme anymore. They're closer to the mainstream of the parties. Well, that same polarization in California is really affecting the debate over housing. You have a median home price in California that's pushing $700,000. And the average Californian, which think of, I can think of myself, going back 15 years when I was renting, I could not have imagined how I go from there to home ownership in this environment with these costs, even with a very good income. It would have been so hard to think of where that's going to go. So you have the average California renter who doesn't see a path to home ownership, doesn't even believe it's going to be possible. And that changes the mindset of how they see home ownership. And now you have folks who look at just about anybody who can afford a home as somebody who is wealthy enough to not need any more breaks. So that brings more challenges to tax breaks that traditionally, like Prop 13, like the mortgage interest deduction, like other items that were created as a way of extending a stepladder to equity, to home ownership, to building family wealth, and now are seen as tax breaks for the wealthy, because a homeowner is now a wealthy person in California. And that's poisoning our ability to problem solve and try to bring up that next generation of homeowners who are invested in their neighborhood, invested in their community. And you've seen what's happened with, Ben in particular, in the rental industry, has had to work on some very difficult issues, trying to figure out how does rental industry function in a world where they're seen as almost vultures to the economy when they're the ones actually, who own the housing that is being used by much of California, where they need to be. And meanwhile, we're here with the supply-demand problem, which is the real culprit. The fact that California put so many restrictions on the ability to build. There's a reason why you can build a home profitably in Texas or in much of the country, sell it for $250,000, $300,000, and be just fine as a builder. And you can't get anywhere near that in huge parts of California. If that was possible here, then our affordability problem goes away a lot faster. But we've built, a series of gates to basic production of housing that for a generation has caused us to underproduce. And now we're here in a position where, we're in a much more difficult spot. So we find ourselves going into this election and into next year in a role of strategic retreat, trying to figure out what parts, where we have to take a few steps back in order to protect some essential parts of the policy that even allows profitable building, profitable landlord activity to take place. It's not easy. And it's really, it results in a lot of difficult conversations that we have with folks in our own industry when we try to explain why we have to give this piece over here in order to protect this essential section over there. I'll give you an example of something that's on the ballot next week. Realtors have put together a proposition called Prop 19. And Prop 19 does something we've been trying to get done for a very long time, which allows seniors 55 and older, disabled homeowners, and in this case, victims of natural disaster, to make their Prop 13 benefits portable and very easily move around the state, anywhere in the state, without seeing that tax increase associated with selling a home that you've been in for a long time and moving to another. But it also does something that some of our own members, and I'm sure some folks listening to this won't like, and that is it changes the rules around when homes are reassessed when they pass from parent or grandparent to child and grandchild. So it says that if the inherited home, if the child or grandchild moves into it, makes it a primary residence in the first year, then they keep their parents or grandparents' tax basis. If they don't, so if it's a rental or otherwise not a primary residence, then it's reassessed to current market value. That change results in basically offsetting the tax revenue losses that are done through the portability side, and actually results in a little bit extra revenue for the state. So it's a net tax increase. So the question is, why are we doing that? One big reason is because we're convinced that the state legislature and voters will do that to us in 2 years, and that they would have done it to us this year if we hadn't come together on a deal that at least allowed the money to stay within housing. The polling that we have on Prop 19 says that the removal and the changes to the inheritance tax side of it is far more popular than the portability part. And you'd think that our members feel that, okay, so we get the nice sugar coating of tax portability that helps so many Californians move without facing a tax increase. And that wraps the bitter pill of this of changing the rules on inheritances. The voters see it exactly the opposite. The voters don't want the tax portability because they don't want to grant another tax break to what they see as people who don't need them, folks who own houses, wealthy people in their view. But they're willing to hand that over if we reassess rental properties, if we reassess these wealthy family inheritances that get pointed out in the press on a regular basis. But that's a real challenge because by the way, I haven't convinced my sister on this yet. She's going to inherit some rental property from her husband's side of things, and I try to explain to her, listen, it's not that this is the best way. We tried it the other way 2 years ago. We tried it without making any compromise, and the voters said no way, knocked us down by 20 points. Is that a question or a timer? Timer? Okay, gotcha. So that's the background of what we're walking into and what's going to frame so many of our debates. The legislature, we'll find out who's in the legislature in 5 more days. It's not going to change a whole lot in California. The outcome of these legislative elections aren't going to shift many of the debates going on. But I haven't seen a moment of uncertainty as to what will be on the agenda for Sacramento to discuss at this level at any point that I can recall. We know that housing affordability has been top of mind of voters the last couple of years. Governor Newsom ran on a pledge of we need to build a lot more housing. He seemed to understand the problem, diagnosed it right, and says we're going to pull out all the stops so that we can catch up and build, I think, 3.5 million units in 8 years. We're nowhere near that. And we haven't passed anything on the housing production side, just a couple little things around the edges. And honestly, the governor hasn't engaged on the level so that we can move some of those things. There's been game, not from the governor, but certainly from the legislature, some game playing around, what can and can't be done. And in the end, the only thing that's passed has been additional restrictions on landlords that make, making a living quite a bit more difficult. We've created new pitfalls, we've created new ways to get in trouble, and we've particularly targeted these new regulations on small landlords, which is really, really unfortunate. You look at Prop 21, it's on the ballot next week. Prop 21 is laser targeted at trying to make life more difficult on smaller landlords. So you have, what Prop 21 would do is would remove some guardrails around what cities and counties and local governments can do with rent control. So counties and cities can enact rent control, but what they can't do is a few things. They cannot attach it to single family housing or 1 to 4 units or individually titled condos. They can't have what's called vacancy control, which means it cannot, when the unit's vacated, you can't keep it rent controlled, waiting for the next tenant to come in. Well, who does this really attach to? Small landlords are much more likely to have those, single family 1 to 4 units. Small landlords are the ones who know their tenants for 20 years and will be more likely to be generous with the rent and not raise it enough to keep up even with their own costs at times. That's who's primarily impacted. Now, fortunately, and I hope Ben has great news on it, the news I've seen has been pretty positive, that I don't think the voters are going for it. Again, next week we have Prop 15, which aims to undo essentially half of Prop 13 from 1978 to remove Prop 13 protections from commercial real estate enacting the largest tax increase in California's history. And if you read any thread discussing this of policy folks that are working on 15, you very quickly get into, so when do we go after residential? And they'll say, well, let's wait until we get this part done, because to undo Prop 13 residential. They only kept it out of this one because they wanted to keep it as lean as possible while still enacting this large tax increase. So I'm very interested in what this next year is going to mean for our local market in particular. You know, I'm looking at numbers that don't make any sense based on where we started the year. The median home price in the Western Inland Empire, which is essentially all of the two counties other than the High Desert, the Coachella Valley, and the Hamilton Jacinto area, is 460 is a figure I just got a little while ago. We have inventory up, we have sales activity up year over year, and we have job losses exploding. Even the Coachella Valley is doing very well, a place where they lost a lot of their economic drivers in the spring when COVID forced them to cancel major events, everything from the concerts to tennis tournaments. And they're quite sure that 2021 is going to be worse as far as not allowing those things to come back. And despite all that, you don't see any let up in housing, in the cost of housing or the amount of activity. The agents, the real estate offices seem to be doing quite well. And I can't help but have this feeling of, you know, the coyote running off the cliff, and, you know, for some reason, gravity isn't taking hold. But you can see the fundamentals when you run back the tape, you know, rewind and look at what's happened. You can piece together the story, but where does this take us at this point, and how do we keep a functioning problem-solving approach in City Hall, in Sacramento, and in Washington, D.C., or try to bring one back in many cases, when so much of this is going to be dependent on what, you know, how we can solve some of those debates in policy circles. Aaron, can I tell one last anecdote?
Sure, please.
This is an example, and I won't say what city this occurred in, but Ben and I were both involved in this. As the pandemic was taking hold, and there was a lot of worry about what would happen to tenants who have lost their jobs, there was a city that sought to enact rent control. There were a couple of council members that wanted to bring it forward, one in particular. And as they studied it, they realized, okay, the only version of rent control they can bring forward is one that would do almost nothing for anybody. It would have very little actual impact because of restrictions from the governor's office, because of restrictions placed earlier in the year. It was just symbolic at that point. And so it got to a point where we said, you know, our association said, we're not even going to bother to oppose this because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't hurt anybody either, hardly at all. So we don't want to be set up as a piñata to be railed on when they decide, you know, to find an enemy to go after and say these are the people who are opposing helping tenants. But what we were going to do is remember that in the middle of a health crisis, in which so much uncertainty was putting people at least mentally on the brink, if not actually on the brink, that someone was choosing to take that moment to grandstand and put forward, take actual debate time, take actual staff time to put forward a symbolic piece of legislation. And that's the kind of activity in politics that drives me nuts. and I think makes a lot of people crazy. And that's what we hope will not be what reigns as we go forward.
I don't know. I hate getting into politics, but I really thought the pandemic was going to be this generation's 9/11. I've been overwhelmingly disappointed by politicians that continue to debate a help that our current sitting president wanted to launch in summer. And it got political. And part of the reason is states like Texas and Florida, why should they make up for states like California that have mismanaged a pension system? Of course it gets political, but the media isn't picking up that. And it's so nuanced. Good housing policy takes a decade. It doesn't fit nicely in election cycles, 2 to 4 years. And The builders, unfortunately, aren't represented online today, but they have the saying, forget NIMBYism, it's bananas. Build absolutely nothing near anything. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anythingers. I'm on several, housing initiatives. I'm on a housing task force. And of course, 2 months ago, they're like, well, we're just going to create a new fee. I'm like, do you guys hear yourselves? You're creating a new fee. I was like, are you shooting yourself in the foot against economic development because you're trying to charge more? I think we only have to look at LA's HHH fund, $1.2 billion to build. I think they wanted to build 6,000 units. They are on track of a median unit price of $530,000, with some affordable units, in quotes, going as much as $730,000 here in LA for affordable units. If they would just work with real estate investors and give us a chance, I think we would do far more with far less money, but that's just me. So
Yeah.
We are a little bit ahead of schedule. Let's get Ben involved. Ben is with the California Apartment Association. He was with us with Turmoil, and I begged him to come back because landlords are just nervous. Before COVID even started, we were having conversations. Half were worried about this economy doesn't make sense. I'm out of Dodge. Half was like, I'm tired of the political nonsense in California. And then COVID hit, and now it's just a free for all. Everybody's like, later. So I can't wait what you have to say. The mic is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Paul. What an excellent lead in. And, Paul mentioned tactical retreat, and I couldn't agree more. It feels like as policymakers or policy wonks that are trying to help create good policy or see good policy created in the state, we're constantly in a tactical retreat. I'm sure a lot of you right now are very frustrated with AB 3088, the COVID Protection Act, Eviction Protection Act that's currently in place that came out of this summer's legislative cycle. And you probably think that this is such a horrible policy, and it's just, how could we have ever gotten here? But I want to go back for a second and recognize where we were just about 15 days before that bill was passed, because I think a lot of people don't know how far worse it could have been. The legislatures on the Assembly side and through the Senate Judiciary Committee and Appropriations Committee had passed a completely separate bill, AB 1436 by Senator Chu, or Assemblymember Chu. And this tenant protection bill went far beyond what finally came out with AB 3088. That had tenant protections in place, basically we're not having to require anyone paying any rent until 2021. It had other financial pieces to it, as far as the landlord couldn't actually go after the tenant until 2022 for those missed payments of that entire time. It also prohibited the landlord from applying any security deposit money they already had to satisfy rent, even after that tenant left. And it also did not include some tax credits that were part of the mix of what was going on in the legislature maybe a week before that. That was a separate bill, AB 1410. So those are the things we were hearing in the media, and when everything sort of fell apart, we as an association really had to go into a tactical retreat, because we recognized that that bill was one vote away in the Senate to going into being law. So we fell back and we started negotiating at with the governor's office, and basically that's what came out of AB 3088. Now, AB 3088, we recognize is very onerous. It's all about going after and making it very difficult for landlords. Just like Paul mentioned. It does give some protections to the tenants. It gives some protections for evictions, but it truly puts the burden of all of that on landlords. It makes it very difficult for small landlords that are frankly not used to this, used to being legislated like this, because for a long time there have been protections for both some eviction, but mostly for rent control and other pieces of the puzzle. That were there for those small homeowners or single family homeowners that aren't there anymore. This bill does bring into an effect where you cannot sell your home without a 60-day notice, but only then can you sell it for if you're going to be selling that home. You have to already be in a contract. So how do you get into a 60-day contract, then give notice, and then hope and pray that your tenant's going to move out? So I recognize that we have just many folks that are very frustrated by this. And we see that every day. We have a 1-800 number, a hotline that for anyone that wants to ever reach out to our groups in Sacramento. And we get these calls all day and all night regarding how they get out of their current rental situation. They want to know with this protection that the tenants have, when can they finally sell? When can they give notice? So when can they finally get out of this rental that they have and move on into something else? I find that very disturbing, and I think that's a, you know, when Paul and I talk about various things that we see on the horizon, we both worry about the potential that there's just a fleeing of Sacramento, or fleeing of California with so many people. So that's something that, you know, I recognize that, you know, it's just such a difficult situation how we got to this AB 3088. But again, we were in such a bad shape. And Paul nails it on the head. It's Sacramento, and it's the politics of trying to make a headline. You know, politicians used to try and plant trees. They wanted to plant ideas and policies that would hopefully carry our country forward into the future. And so often now, all we see out of Sacramento is folks trying to create a headline. This is a headline so they can get reelected, or a headline so they can show their constituents they're fighting for them, not a headline to show that they're trying to actually make our state better. We rarely see that. And so I find it very disconcerting over this legislative session. And just like Paul said, this tactical retreat we sort of find ourselves in California. For anyone that wants to hopefully have investments and move forward in investing, it's a very difficult situation. So I was asked to sort of look forward what we see coming in 2021, and boy, it's a tough crystal ball to look through. It's about as foggy as it gets right now, especially looking forward to Tuesday with our election. But on the state side, we pretty much know what we're going to have in Sacramento. We're going to have a sort of the same legislative session, we think, with the very same characters for the most part, except for we're probably anticipating losing a few more Republicans. And as hard as that sounds, is you know, falling further to the left in our both legislative houses. And with that, our group is expecting that we'll be more work on COVID protections for evictions, even though we feel we've got a pretty good setup right now. Yeah, and of course, the tenant protection groups will want to have more. We're also seeing right now that the tenant protection groups are already talking about making the current 15-day notice that's required under AB 3088 permanent. So right now, if you're used to doing a 3-day notice, now you have to give a 15-day notice. Of course, that's 15 days without including weekends or holidays, so almost a month could be time sometimes, as opposed to your regular 3-day notice. So that makes it very difficult for those folks that are struggling where they've already got someone that's behind in rent. And Paul mentioned those small landlords. So often I see these small landlords being kind and forgiving, and finally get to the point where they finally feel that they have to serve a notice, and they're now so far maybe months behind, but yet they still have to wait another 15 days, and makes it so difficult. So, again, the administration is trying to make things so much harder on the big landlords, but it's really the small landlords that really take it very hard. Of course, the legislature, they do have extra budget money, as Paul mentioned, but they seem to be operating in it where they feel that they're going to go into a deficit. They feel like that Roadrunner 2, where the gravity hasn't hit them yet. So as much as the last couple of headlines have been about Sacramento having extra billions of dollars, we know that right now the governor's office is putting it out that they don't want to see any bills moving forward that have a cost. So what does that mean to you and I as maybe the other folks? That means that we're all going to have to pay for it. So again, they're going to put that burden on the landlords and on the folks that are the owners of the houses, as opposed to trying to find any meaningful fix that might have some finance behind it. We're also anticipating the attempts to provide legal representation for tenants facing eviction. We've heard of this before, but we're expecting those bills to come back again. And of course, again, the only way to pay for this then would be to show that increasing fees on landlords, or increasing fees on transactions, or some other way to create that legal representation funding. We've seen various ideas come up over the last couple of years in the legislature, but we're anticipating more next year. Of course, we're also hoping for renewed attempts for expediting housing production. As a CAA, we were supportive of a couple different bills. Of course, those bills didn't get very far this legislative year, but we're hopeful that next year maybe it might be different. But we recognize that the true meaningful fixes as far as for changes to our entire setup, or how we go about producing houses, and how we're doing that as far as California and how we're stopping that, needs some serious overhaul. And I'm convinced that this governor just does not seem to be, like Paul said, really getting engaged on that. So whether or not we'll see anything like that meaningful coming forward, I don't know. Of course, there will also be some bills, I'm sure, to address our homeless crisis that continues to go on. Although I hear from different areas that the homeless seems to be better. Although I hear, like San Diego, I hear that it's much worse in downtown. So I'm not sure where that's going to go, but we do know that we expect to see some of that. So that's sort of where we're at and where we see ourselves from the apartment association side. We recognize that there's just so many questions and so much difficulty with the new legislation. Of course, I don't want to sound like a record, but we do have a lot of this on our website. So if anyone needs that, it's out there. But of course, we're an association and we'd love to see you join. But most importantly, we all know we all need to get through this together. So quite a bit of it was actually free for a long time on our website during the beginning part of this COVID disaster. But more and more of it now is behind a paywall. My apologies for that, but that's just how we have to move forward.
Nope. Understand. And Paul, we'll bring you back. We've got a little bit of time for questions because I know, Ben, you can't stay the entire time. I would like to point out here in the Inland Empire, 211, I happen to be on the board. I know of a landlord in the Inland Empire who got $500,000 to help over 120 families that were behind on rent. This was a grant. Our local United Way has gotten over $30 million in funding via government grants from the CARES Act, as well as private donations. I know a lot of people online, you invest in other counties beside your own. 211 is a health and human services hotline. The number one reason people call the hotline over the years, even before COVID, it was real estate related. When you have tenants or you call them, you'll be given a laundry list of government programs, from everything from food stamps to utility assistance to potentially understanding what kind of resources are available to you as a landlord. And you might have to get a little bit more involved and help your tenants to get through the process. But please, please, please call your local 211, go on the website. Some of these grants are available and people just don't know. They're not looking. So you've got national, state, and local resources that some people just don't even know about. Ben, at some point, it makes me feel a little uncomfortable, like taxation without representation. Is there any lawsuits going on from the perspective of the landlord? Because the legislature has gone a little bit too far and it's feeling we're getting feed to death. At what point do we get to have a say?
Couldn't agree more. I'll tell you, our association, to be quite frank, we're looking for that perfect plaintiff. Recognize that right now, a lot of people are afraid to step forward and be that plaintiff. When we do sit them down with our attorneys, we explain to them that, look, your name will be known. Someone might find your address. How well known is that? If you Google yourself, can you find your own address? And if that's a yes, well then, okay, willing to go along with this and be our plaintiff, but recognize you might have these tenant rights groups on your doorstep any morning that you might not know of. So that's frankly where we're at right now. We do recognize that this is right in the path of the takings lawsuit, but trying to find that perfect plaintiff. If any of you folks know that person, please give me a jingle. My phone number is on our website, but we are looking. And I truly believe that at some point this will come back. But what's interesting is Sacramento recognizes some of that, which is why a lot of this legislation does expire at a certain time. It'll have to be someone that definitely is had some loss and you can show that loss, and we'll have to be able to prove it, of course. And how we assign that to the state. There's lots of questions, but we are looking in that direction.
I would just encourage everybody, depending on what kind of industry work you're doing. If you build a lot, please join the Builders Association. If you're doing a lot of landlording, please join the state organization. And if you're a realtor, just participate. I always encourage people to get on boards, become a trusted expert. The only reason I got to sit on the Housing Council, and they trust me, I come with a data approach. It's realistic. They know that I'm not there. I'm being genuine, trying to help. I don't believe in some of the things that they're trying to do is going to work. We just got our updated affordable housing numbers here in Riverside. We have to build 13,000. How do we get to that number if we don't get creative? I showed the Housing Council, it included the county and the city, and I said, there's over 10,000 lots, over 10,000 square feet in the city of Riverside. Half of those are owned by landlords. Half of those are further out of the area. They live in another county. So they're not paying attention to you. They don't know that accessory dwelling units are possible. These are people that have the properties, they have the experience, have access to private financing. They're already landlords. Tell them that you need affordable housing and put some money behind it. And they looked at me like I was crazy. But with our voices at that local level at the city government, if we're trusted, they're doing the best that they can. You have to understand, at the other side of the coin, they've got people who are really struggling, near homelessness, can't eat, You've got kids that typically rely on the school system for almost, 90% of their meals, stuck at home with parents that can't get to work. It's complicated. So thank you for all the work that you and Paul do. I understand how difficult and frustrating it is. I don't know how you do it. Paul, if you're moving to San Diego, does this mean that we're losing you in the Inland Empire?
No, I'm not moving to San Diego.
Okay.
I'll be staying in Riverside, but I'm here quite a bit. So right now, my since I have no meetings in the Inland Empire, I just come here on Thursday night and go back to Riverside on Monday night.
All right.
I'll still be around.
When it comes to practical ways that local real estate professionals can be involved, what would you suggest?
First and foremost is just to keep an eye on the materials that we put out, either locally or from the state level. Just know what's happening, because just staying up to date, even on new laws. Like every year there's a compendium of here are all the new laws that are going to affect you come January 1st. That should be coming out any day now, actually. So things like that are the primary benefit, just to stay abreast of what's going on. The association, in the past it was in-person meetings, but now it's all Zoom. So it becomes a lot easier to join a educational session or listen to a speaker online. You can put it on the background and make some breakfast, and you pick up a lot of what's going on. At the end of the day, if the members are able to lend their time to communicate with us, I mean, the role that Ben and I have is really to find out precisely what is happening to impact the business of our members, and then translate that into some kind of troubleshooting or fix when we need to do that, or find opportunities where we can make it better. So the more our members engage with us, contact us, talk to us, my cell phone's freely available out there. I'll give it to you right now, 951-500-1222. I love hearing from the members. And even if you're not sure whether the issue you're dealing with has any kind of basis in some kind of public policy, I want to hear about it, because it may. Chances are it has something, and we can try to find a way to address it. But we only know the things that people talk to us about or that we encounter personally. So that's it. Just make sure you talk to us so that we have a chance to fix the things that you see going on out there.
Ben, same question for you. What would you like to see maybe mom and pop landlords do that you think might be practical and helpful?
Sure. Yeah, just like Paul says, just try and it's so difficult. It seems like every couple of weeks we got something new coming from Sacramento or a local jurisdiction. Our organization has really been trying lately to try and break down by jurisdiction the compliance materials that are required by each city. We're trying to get that out there to our members. So if you're looking to make an investment in another jurisdiction, we hopefully already have some of that data. Frankly, we're only probably at the top 25 cities right now. We're trying to drill down further. California being such a diverse area, it's very difficult to do that. We're working on that very strongly to basically create a compliance database for it, for all of our members. Because we recognize that most people can't keep up on all this. It's very difficult too, as we're going through the legislative cycle, sometimes just to make contact, like Paul said. I'm the same way. Please, if you have a thought or something affecting you, if you've got a story about how you're being financially impacted, I'd love to hear it. And I put you on my list to make sure when we do have an opportunity to make contact in Sacramento, and just like Paul said, the meetings are all on Zoom. Well, so are the state capitol meetings. We did have some success with the Senate Judiciary Committee. We had over, I want to say it was close to 250 small mom and pop landlords call into the Judiciary Committee. Now, of course, Judiciary Committee is not like your local city. They're not required to give 3 minutes like we are in local jurisdictions. They limited it down to you have to say if you're for or against. But for a lot of our smaller landlords, they were able to sneak in a few words of cautionary tales of, hey, this is my only income and I'm losing my own home over this. And that did weigh on some of the Senate Judiciary Committee members. Unfortunately, they still voted across party lines. And in fact, someone asked in the chat, what do these legislators say when we tell them you're putting all this on the landlords and this is supposed to, because you get to a takings? Well, it's not only that they don't care, they feel that their constituents feel that this is the only thing that will save them from what Aaron put out there, this draconian situation that they find themselves in, where they're unfortunately, on their last meals, it seems like some of these renters. So we hear it coming from the other side too, and that's the tough part these legislators have. But for the most part, it's these party line votes that really make it difficult over the years, and get us some really horrible legislation at the end of the day.
Some of the bills that passed in September that Newsom signed, SB 1079, trustee sale investors. I called some of the largest ones in Southern California. It was not on their radar. Starting in January, the state of California has a 45-day redemption period. So if you as an investor buy something at the courthouse steps and within 15 days, an eligible buyer has the opportunity to raise their hand with the intent to buy. What that means is they have a full 30 days after that to make good on that. They have to have a cashier's check. However, you as the investor are still going to be responsible for things like insurance, just all the things that could cost you along the way. And the bill does not have a provision of you making up for that. The eligible buyer, which could be a government entity, a new owner occupant, or a nonprofit, could buy that for at the same price or $1 more, and you are going to be stuck with the joy of the expenses for holding for 45 days, including potentially unrecorded city liens. Hilarious. It would have been much more effective if they dealt with this in sort of like a short sale process, sort of before it went to trustee sale. This is probably going to actually increase foreclosures in the state of California, because a lot of the trustee sale buyers is like, why would I take that risk? I'll wait for it to go back as an REO. Do you really think the new tenant buyer is going to be prepared to deal with homeowners that are holdovers? Probably not. It's just a mess. And Skinner, the legislator who did it, it was well-meaning, but it was frustrating to hear the process that attorneys and our professional associations tried to do. Holy cow. My other favorite one had to do with accessory dwelling units. One of the tricks that HOAs were trying to do is just like, hey, you know what? No, ADUs is going to bring you over this 25% threshold as a rental in our HOA. So yeah, you can't build one. Newsom signed a bill in September that basically doesn't allow HOAs to consider accessory dwelling units as well as junior accessory dwelling units as part of that equation. So if you've got condos like me, you could eventually turn those garages into extra units, and there's really nothing at this point that an HOA can do. The state's trying. They're doing some very weird things. It's been unusual to see the state put the smack down and take away local rights. So even the state is fighting back a little bit, understanding that they're part of the problem. But Paul, Ben, any last words, any favorite bills that you just shook your head and laughed at and said, how did this pass?
We had one that didn't pass, but would have had a lot of impact on the folks listening to this call. There was a piece of legislation that said that anytime a property with a tenant in it would be offered for sale, it first had to be offered to eligible nonprofits who had the first right to bid on the property and to try to close a sale on it. And only after that process was completed and no sale was done could they move on to actually market the property to the full market, for whatever fair price they could get. That was in process back in August. Fortunately, they didn't get through it, but that doesn't mean it's not coming back in January.
Yep.
Ben, any favorites?
No, that was definitely, Paul hit that one, but there's just so many, it's hard to keep track. I mean, it's just amazing what this Sacramento can put out, but a lot of it though is a bit of a shell game, and we'll see some of these bills that Paul and I, you say shake our heads at, we go home and cry into our whiskey, but and the reality is we realize that some of these are a shell game to get up through these different committees, get it out, and then get it to the other house, even through a couple of those committees, knowing that, this would be a horrible upset to the economy and everything else, but they get it that far so that they can start negotiating, and what comes out of negotiations are not much better. So it's just been a struggling couple of years, and we've been seeing this tactic, and it's so frustrating, but it's the state we live in. And I think that you do see finally some opportunities for people fighting back. One other piece of thing we've been sort of looking at or dwelling on is maybe we do a proposition as a tenant landlords, and how do we do that, and what would that look like, and what protections would we want to try and get in there. But then you have to balance that out. How, just like Paul's organization had to balance out their proposition. What do you need to give up? What's that tactical retreat that you're going to give up so you can get your piece of legislation through, and maybe have everybody vote on it in the state of California. But at the end of the day, it's just such a difficult situation we all find ourselves in, not only with COVID, but just with the ongoing drama of Sacramento politics that really is affecting everybody right now. And you nailed it on the head earlier. It's the haves versus have-nots, and how do we fix that? And how do we change that dichotomy? And I strongly agree with you. I think there's got to be some opportunity to bring people into the mix of home ownership. I recognize my first day I had that feeling too of mowing that lawn. It is something special, and we just need to help bring people into that fold. And I think then people will recognize that that's what they've been missing out on for a long time, and then that we can all start moving forward and all start investing together and investing in our communities, investing in all of our neighborhoods. I think that's probably the most one of the most special things I've seen come out of COVID in my own city is driving our neighborhoods and looking at all these homes that people are finally investing in. The folks that, and especially in my area, they're longtime commuters that are finally looking at the front of the house going, boy, it really needs a paint job, and they're doing it. And that's something I think is special and one of those positive things that have come out of COVID. But we need more of that. We need to bring more people into that fold.
Very good. I really appreciate you two setting the stage for this first part of the residential town hall. One question, how do you see the new California homestead exemption impacting the market?
Which exemption?
The California homestead exemption, to where if the bill passes, that you'd be able to move as a senior or impacted by a disaster.
I'm sorry, the realtors. Yeah. Maybe we can take that, Paul.
Yeah, I thought that was referring to the legislation that just passed, changing the homestead exemption when you're a debtor, and what you can protect. But as far as the one that we're doing, the estimate from the State Legislative Analyst's Office, as well as our own market research, is that it'll increase transactions statewide by between 65,000 and 80,000 statewide, which is actually quite a change. That's on the basis of about 400,000 transactions statewide. So looking at 15 and 20% additional inventory. That's actually produced on both sides of the equation. One is seniors, and we did a lot of market research on this. Seniors who are staying in their home would like to move, but don't because they fear the tax increase. A lot of them will be freed up to make that move. And then on the rental side, there will be some additional incentive for some people who inherit that property to put it in the market and sell because they're not getting that additional tax benefit from keeping the old basis. So on that side of things, there's a piece of benefit.
If you're thinking about heading out of town, I talked to an investor last month who moved to Arizona. He recommends that everybody change your license plate as soon as possible. He was chased down on more than one occasion and harassed for his California license plates. Florida last year, I was told 3 times in one trip to keep my California politics at home. Just tell them you're Canadian. I don't know what to tell you. All right, guys. Dad, any last questions for our legislative panel? You're on mute, Pops. By the way, it was a question. Daniela was asking about the bill that passed, the $300,000 but complicated evaluation. Paul, can you speak to the homestead exemption? I think it's the one that you were mentioning.
Okay. That one, so I'm not as familiar with it because we've had this antiquated homestead exemption that is used to protect, it's meant if you're a debtor or if you're in a lawsuit, you can protect X amount of your home's valuation. And I think it was stuck at like $30,000 for a long time. It wasn't adjusted upwards. And now it's at I think it's like $300,000 or the average of the homes in your area, whichever is highest, something along those lines. It shouldn't have any real impact on in any significant way on the real estate market. But I mean, individuals who find themselves in financial trouble can protect more of their home.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Okay.
There are 3 rules in real estate that if I were on the other side of the table, that I would be able to argue against them existing. And of course, I'm on the real estate side, but I want to know if there's any consideration about doing away with depreciation. And I'll just give you an example. I've been able to depreciate a house that I am now in escrow in that according to tax laws has gone down in value, and it's gone up about 500% since I've owned it. I just sold a residence, and that's tax-free gain because I've lived there for more than 2 years, or whatever the new rule is. I've lived there for a longer time. And I have another exchange that's going on that I've owned a commercial property. So the three holy grails of real estate, the 500 grand tax-free when you own a residence, is that going to be under attack? Is depreciation going to be under attack? Because this stuff doesn't go down, it goes up. And 1031 exchanges.
Good question.
So the capital gains exclusion, the $500,000, it's been bandied about, and it was part of a version of the tax law from 2018.
Right.
It was part of the initial passage. So when it passed the House of Representatives, it had a reduction in the capital gains exclusion that was later removed by the Senate and the concurrence bill. 1031 has not been under serious challenge in Congress, but that could change this coming year. There's definitely talk about changing 1031 exchange usage. It's pretty well defended by Republicans in Congress. We've never seen a serious threat to it from Democrats in Congress, but the tides are changing out there. The depreciation piece of it, I haven't seen any talk about that. And some of these things, some of these exclusions aren't exactly fitting with the populist revolts that we've seen really in both parties and across the country. And so we usually sneak them into a giant omnibus bill sometime in December each year, when we have like a week to go in, before the government shuts down. I don't know if that option is going to be with us. We usually have what's called like a tax extenders bill, in which we take all the little tax loopholes that we want to pass and the public wouldn't want to know about, and we stuff it into this giant document so that no one gets tagged for it. We'll see if we can do that going forward.
Okay, I was just curious because those three are big deal for real estate, and just the mood of the people that have wealth and how to make it look unfair. That would be three things that I would mention. I hope they don't change. I'm a real estate investor, but I'm concerned about them being seriously looked at.
My sense is there's bigger fish to fry, but those could get fried along with the bigger fish. Sometimes you get caught in a net.
Okay.
Yikes. Okay. We are on. Thank you, guys. That is a great way to set up what we're about to do next. So at our very first residential town hall, when COVID first hit, a lot of these speakers joined us to sort of give us insights into what was happening in all the different areas of California. And we are doing the same, I think, in what is in reverse order. So this should be very interesting. First, we've got Linska Bracknell, San Diego. And I just want to say, first off, thank you for San Diego Creative Real Estate Investors Association for being part of this event since the very beginning in 2008. You guys have been such an incredible partner. Even look at your background. You've pulled up I Survive Real Estate 2019, like you're on the stage. I miss seeing your face right in the front. But thank you for joining us. I can't wait to hear what's going on in San Diego.
Yes, and thanks for inviting us. And I certainly miss seeing everybody in person. But I'm sure Bruce will not miss my probing question this year. Maybe you have a probing question for me this time, Bruce. So I'm ready to share my screen. And I just wanted to say that we still are short of $1 million, right? So hopefully, if you're doing well in real estate, you should have enough money to come up with it.
I didn't say it, Linska did. Thank you, Linska.
Yes. And if it is still tax deductible. So either way, you cannot lose by still donating. So I'm going to have my slides, and I think, I am not as good as the guys talking without slides, and especially Aaron put the pressure on this time. He said, yes, we're dressing up, yes, makeup, yes, hair, and yes, please do a TED Talk. So I Googled TED Talk, and here we are. This is my first attempt to do a TED Talk. It's supposed to be entertaining. It's supposed to make you guys think. So let's see if I get 5 stars at the end. So I'm representing NSDREI, which is the San Diego Creative Investor Association. We always say we're the largest one in Southern California, and certainly location in San Diego, we really are the bright spot, and it's kind of the insider tip of the real estate industry. So my name is Lenska, and here we are, 9 months later, and I'm ready to burst. For all you people that think I'm still in a childbearing age, thank you so much. But it did feel a little bit like a pregnancy the last 9 months, because waking up with morning sickness, watching the unemployment numbers and GDP numbers, then bursting probably more out of my pants because the refrigerator is too close to my home office. And then the constant headaches of what do we name it? First of all, what do we name this recession, right? And then what do we name the recovery? Is it a V? Is it a U? Is it an L? Is it a swoosh? Is it a W? We went through all of this. We finally ended up with naming it a K recovery. And nobody ever explained what that straight up line means for the K recovery. I know what it is. It's the 1%ers. Their net worth went straight up. Actually, we should put right the government and Congress in there too. But after I have thought a little bit about it, I came up with X recovery. And here we go. That's all right. It's coming in. It's coming in. So X, because X has actually a lot of different meanings. First of all, we lost a lot of jobs. We lost a lot of career. We destroyed some dreams. We destroyed the middle class. It is really hard right now to predict which direction are we going to, but we know there will be opportunity. And also X actually stands for a transformation or for a crossroad into a new dimension. And I think this is where we exactly are. We have the choice now to really bring this country forward or not. So we have a lot of volatility, and we still don't forget we have a lot of debt. And also, as a real estate investor, you know, we like the 10x returns, right? 1% in interest, lower interest means the prices go up 10%, or vice versa. And then don't forget about the social effect about the XOXO. So here is my kiss, and we still will have Christmas this year, I believe. We all know that the California housing market was a shocker, a surprise, and it outperformed. So one of our investors, Jesse from AJX Investments, says it like this: the unknown was my biggest challenge since COVID started. Adapting and changing quickly to new ways of life has been our biggest reason that we'll still have a successful business. So he does a lot of fix and flips and does very well. Now, shocking is, obviously right now we are measuring our new normal, our new economy with old methods. As we know, California's unemployment numbers, they haven't even processed claims from last month. Okay, so all the numbers, whatever anybody is saying, is probably not quite correct. But California and San Diego has an unemployment rate of 14.4% right now. And as you can see by the yellow coloring, that's pretty bad. But when was the last time we had a shock to the labor market? When we actually lost the manufacturing jobs, right? So this time, the service industry are the unlucky ones. And also the shock is happening much faster. So what to do? So workers can either change careers, which might require expensive and time-consuming education, or move, which means it might actually help us with getting some inventory. Where did all the jobs go from the manufacturing? Look, they all ended up in finance and real estate. So where the question is, where do they end up this time? I think this is not such a big secret that it will end up with the 5 big tech companies. And you see it that California is not on the list of the top performing markets anymore. But wait, San Diego still has one of the best beaches in the US. So shift happens and there is a big city exodus. In this time, San Diego really does not count to the big city. So we have seen some exodus and we have seen about 13,000 companies actually leaving California in the last 4 years. And about 300,000 people have moved to and taken their politics and their cars with their California license plates to Texas, to Salt Lake City, and actually my personal friends all moved up to Idaho. Now, San Diego is still cheap compared to San Francisco. Okay, we offer a great quality of life, but migration is always driven by affordability, as we have the godfather of affordability, Bruce Norris, on the panel right here. So really the haves and have-nots, the people that have a vacation home move to their vacation home. The super rich are buying up the Hamptons, Aspen, Lake Tahoe, Jackson Hole, but still we got Bill Gates that moved to Del Mar. So we are not quite as rich. So which means we have a great Jason and Vanessa that I call them the $2 million team. They do high-end fix and flips and had about 8 showings on their $2 million listing. And a lot of those showings were from Redfin agents, people moving down from San Francisco. The myth about urban and suburban in San Diego and overall, if you really look, there's a lot of talk in the news, but if you go by the My Move data that shows permanent address changes, it just was about 1.9% year over year. Whether they're still driving with their California license plates around, that is to see. But look who is the winner. Texas, Georgia, Florida, and Idaho are actually the winners in that. But permanent moves are flat. So I personally think working from home and the whole suburban is a little overrated. We in California here in San Diego, we had that phenomena for the last 12 years because people moved to Murrieta from San Diego and sat in traffic for 2 hours. Now, San Diego is special, not only because we have the best real estate club here, and I'm one of the board members, but we also have a very strong defense and military base for a lot of zero down. I totally agree with you, Bruce, zero down VA loan. Right now, it totally switched where 10 years ago, somebody made an offer with the VA loan and some agents went like, oh, VA, we don't want to deal with it. Today, this is the golden ticket because it's job security and it's zero down. So we do have technology, life sciences. Life sciences, you can't work from home. You got to go into the office and do the tests with the little, and we do have some manufacturing jobs. But it does take $131,000 for a median home price. Oh, and by the way, nobody really asked who the father is. Is it Donald Trump, Charles Darwin, Darth Vader, or Jerome Powell or Stephen Mnuchin? These are just right now the people that are really having an effect on our economy. And thanks to these two guys and Mnuchin, I hope you guys all are educated on who he is and that he is in the White House. He was the one that bought IndyMac Bank, or not bought, that he was given by the government. So I'm sure he's waiting for another gift this time around. So September key statistics year over year. And I don't want to say San Diego real estate is on fire, because we do have a lot of fires, and it also is a burden on our real estate market, at least north. So we are right now at 665,000, and for detached 753. But the average house in San Diego is $1 million. So let that sink in. So we have 22, we sell a house within 22 days. Last time we had a high increase, that was in 2004. Then we leveled off, and then we had a very big decline. It only took us 18 months to lose half the value. I just want to have people remember that, okay? So August 2018, why did I circle this? That was when prices dropped 10% because they increased the interest rate. Right now, from February to October, we had about a 10%. Now, when you listen to Case Shiller, the average is still about I think 6 or 7% for San Diego. Now, did the prices really go up? Everything is meant, I would say everything hinges on interest rates. So if you look at the payments in August 2018, just go down here. The payments right now are still less than they were in 2018. And for median home price, our rental rates are this. So San Diego actually still makes sense to buy. And so the purchasing power is just, but also not everything went up. The devil is in the data, and the data is right here, that in Rancho Santa Fe, considered a rich zip code, they didn't do much on median sales price. Actually, just the opposite. They have a 14-month supply, bottom left. Now, there's a little bit more hope. They've been selling a little bit better, but they always wear the zip code with the most listings. Now, suburban on sale in San Diego? No, it's not. Just you could say you can get a good deal, but it takes 10 months to sell a property in one of the suburban neighborhoods. So again, a myth that is not true. San Diego downtown, at least it's flat with an upward hope. Nick Davison, one of our members with Sterling Investment, he says data determines direction and diversification. He has flipped over 500 houses, pivoted his business to also flip apartments, and now actually is offering real estate education. So his concerns are obviously, like we all, how is the government influencing the business? Because if I have written a report 2 days ago, I would have had to change it totally today, because the stock market tanked and a lot of other things happened in the meantime. And also, will banks keep lending? Because banks are not lending right now because they are getting ready to save the money to take care of the losses. So obviously, all this is driven by inventory. So inventory of, guys, can you see that? This is down 53% from 2019. Attached units are down about 30%. So we practically have no inventory in San Diego, which our Leo Clark, you probably all know him, says, no problem, no inventory, no problem. I'll create some. But the problem really is the cities. The cities still have not gotten the memo that we are in a housing crisis and that there are 10 to 12 offers on every decent house in San Diego. So this one was not COVID delayed because real estate was declared essential, so was construction. All our subs, everybody else on this project wanted to go back to work, wanted to build out those homes. So this is a few of the success stories that people have done. But we do need to watch, obviously, the new COVID numbers. Europe, especially my hometown, Germany, is unfortunately suddenly not doing too good. The national delinquency rate are at the highest that it has ever been. We're not quite sure about the forbearances. Some people might have just taken a precaution to take out a forbearance. And also we need to watch the unemployment numbers. California accounts for about 25% of national numbers, and it is still at an elevated level of over 200,000. And may I remind you, that does not include the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance for gig workers. Last week, we had about 1.2 million in the US total initial claims. And we are seeing it now going into the white collar workers. Mortgage rates are on the discussion block about that they might jump up next year. I'm really excited about that you guys have a commercial division, because the appraisals on the average, when they are all securitized, they get appraised every so often, right? And so that appraisal just came back and a 27% drop in value. So this is going to be a huge problem. Now, can we just convert a mall into a distribution center? It all sounds great, but it's really not the type of real estate, nor is it the right location. If people don't want an ADU in your background, just guess if you're converting a mall to a distribution center. Now, I'm really actually excited because of the internet. We are really digitizing real estate. The fintech companies, the IPOs in the mortgage markets are just out of this world. We're trying to repurposing asset classes as much as it allows us. We have a lot of issues on the ballot. I just want to make one to the commercial property tax bill. Now, if commercial property values tank, wouldn't it be good then to have them assessed lower? Because if we have that proposition come up, so I think there will be some price discovery. So we really have to watch for future policies and stimulus from our in the trenches property management company. What we found out, the professional managed single family homes are doing better than the investors that are managing their own properties. So we have, the property managers tell me we are collecting 98%. So there are not a lot of people behind. But there is a new company that is called Arrived, which is democratizing the ownership of real estate. It's a new tech startup where you can just with $1,000 invest into a rental home. So these are all exciting news. And then obviously the godmother of all trends in real estate are ADUs. So there are cities that now adopted more pre-approved plans. Actually, the appraiser, the Fannie Mae changed the guidelines to also include manufactured homes, and the appraisers are being educated. It's not quite how we want them to appraise it, but there is actually on the grid form now a edition where they do their adjustments for the ADU. And how much I understood is that the value really didn't catch up yet. The soon we have more comps in that neighborhood or in the ADU space, that will increase the value. So our investors have been really cranking it up and adding the ADUs for an increased ROI from anywhere from 10 to 16%. And that is probably one of the smartest. But how it's practically done, I give that to my co-share county, Derek Harms. And thank you on behalf of SDCIA to be a part of it. And my name is Lenska. You can find more in-depth analyses on San Diego on my YouTube channel. And my last thing I wanted to say is take off the 2 months until the new year. That's what I'm planning on doing. And then, because we have to see how the elections do play out. I never thought it is such an important moment in time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lenska. That was hilarious, per usual. And, you know, SDCIA has really been on the forefront of the ADU conversation. You've put on a few sessions, and earlier this year, I got to participate as MC in an event that you put on Saturday. Is SDCIA going to be doing that again in 2021?
If I am getting ready, yes, because in February, we're hoping to have another event, maybe not like a big one, but probably obviously more like maybe a Zoom call. And because there are certain updates, but it is still, the cities are just holding things up. So it's not a 60 or 90 days. It's just not, just especially, there are certain cities that are really on the ball, like Oceanside and San Diego tries. But I think they're overwhelmed.
Well, I can't wait. Some of the things going on in San Diego are pretty interesting. Them willing to go even with more units. I don't think some people are paying attention to some of the opportunities on upzoning. So if you have a duplex, you could technically build 2 ADUs. So basically go from a single family residence that had an upzone to a duplex. You could possibly get 4 units on that property. So I think there are some unique opportunities in the ADU space specific to California that our Wall Street competitors just won't touch. They don't want that.
Yeah, and they don't want that because they're waiting for the rental properties to become available. And there has been such a huge money raising from BlackRock and other companies. You know, people are afraid that we are heading into this big foreclosure crisis and stuff. There's so much money out there. Invitation Homes owns what, 100,000 rental units. So it's, yeah.
Okay. All right, Derek. Derek Harms, he is the chair of the North San Diego Real Estate Investors Association. We're going to walk our way up the state. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone else that's presented. This has been really cool to watch and insightful. And it's just amazing how much you learn in like an hour's time here. And even though, you know, you like to think you're in the trenches on the forefront of this business, but there's just so much that you just can't absorb. So an event like this is truly important and is imperative for us and our growth, man. So thank you guys for what you do. Thank you for the charities that you support and just everything you put on here. And I'm bummed that we can't come out in our fly gear to the Nixon Library and you know, have a good night and drink some wine with everyone and break bread. But hopefully next year we can get back to that because I look forward to that every year. So I'm actually going to pick up where you guys left off on ADUs. But before I do that, tiny bit of housekeeping. So yes, I'm with the North San Diego Real Estate Investor Association. Typically we meet at the El Camino Country Club up in Oceanside. We've had to go virtual since COVID had started. We've had a pretty good turnout and a lot of really cool speakers. One of which is on this call, 2 of which I should say is on this call, Bruce and Aaron. Thank you guys again for your support. And I'm doing this a little different. So instead of putting a bunch of data on the screen, and I knew Lenska was going to cover most of San Diego's data, which she did. She showed you inventory and sales numbers. And that's relatively indicative for North San Diego as it is through the county as a whole. And I have a few slides I want to share that kind of paint the picture a little more. But what I did is I called every investor I know in town. I called every property manager I know in town with thousands and thousands of units. I've called every agent I know, some of the top producing agents in the county. And I just basically took everyone's temperature and I wrote them all down in some notes and then kind of summarized the sentiments from everyone in town here in San Diego. and just basically got the feeling for what the hell is happening right now and what people are doing about it. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach this. But first, I'm going to get in here to a few slides to kind of show what's happening in the north part of our state. And again, it's nothing too different than what we're seeing in the county as a whole. So you guys, you got audio or visual on the slide? Yep, thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Detached pending sales right now. So these red bars are North San Diego County, and right now everything is pending. It's just, if your home is listed, it's pending, and that's what we're seeing across the board here. Detached percent of original list price, we are at 100% of list price is what sellers are getting right now for their home. And the overall sentiment is so indicative of what you see on this chart. It's very good for real estate agents with listings, and it's very good for sellers. It's difficult for investor buyers that want to get quote unquote good deals or a discount on a property, because sellers are starting to see this trend, even if they're not the most educated seller and on the front lines of following what's happening in their local markets. But this is starting to become mainstream news. So detached average days on market in North San Diego, 25 days. That's an average. That is insane. North San Diego has been pretty fortunate compared to some of the other counties over the last 3 years, but 25 days detached on average days on market is amazing for the detached. And honestly, it's like way less than that in reality. Like, your home is not staying on the market for longer than a week right now if it's like priced anywhere somewhat appropriately, or unless it has some major issue with the property or the location, or some sort of negligent issue on the property. It's just, they're selling fast. The detached median sales price in North San Diego County, we're at $719 right now. That is up 12%, which is a lot. And you see some of these numbers throughout the county, but they're all very similar, and we've just seen so much growth. And the last slide I want to show you, because this one is pretty interesting. I like this slide. So it shows 2020 actives, which is the light blue here, and then 2020 pendings, which is a little darker here. You can see the delta has gotten very small between active and pending here. Whereas you go back to this time last year, the delta was a lot more, way more than triple. So essentially right now in San Diego, in the north part of the county and overall, if your home is listed and it's reasonably priced and it's in reasonable shape, you are getting multiple offers, you are selling it quickly, and you're getting some really aggressive buyer tactics now. So on multiple deals that I've either flipped or listed recently, we're seeing a bunch of offers come in with no appraisal contingency, no inspection contingency, and we're seeing that now. We're seeing escalation clauses. Most of you know what that is, but if not, essentially buyers are willing to pay $3,000 or $5,000 higher than the next highest offer, as long as you show them proof of the next highest offer. And I mean, it's getting to a point where everything just feels extremely frothy, and it's just this hysteria in the marketplace. And at least for me, it makes me think like, hey, how long can this music keep going? And hold on, time out, take a second, eyes wide open. Let's make sure I'm making smart moves. And I'm gonna dive into that in a second here. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now, and I'm gonna pull up some notes that I took. And because I'm kind of on this market topic right now, I'm gonna finish here, then I'm gonna circle back to ADUs. But overall, you guys, this market is insane here in San Diego and in North San Diego County. A bunch of the guys I talked to today were saying, Derek, everything right now is worth at least $100K more than it's listed for. And that's real. I mean, we're seeing a lot of homes get priced at where they should be priced based on the data and the comps. And we're like $100K more than list price in what we call affordable homes, you know, $600,000-$700,000 price point in San Diego, which that's a lot of money. It's more than 10% over list. It's crazy. A lot of investors in San Diego, house flippers, are seeing more $100,000 profits on deals than they've ever had before. And it's simply because of this supply and demand and inventory imbalance, and people are just getting really loose with their offers. Overall, most people I talk to were cautiously optimistic about Q1 through Q2 2021. But an overwhelming theme I got from people was, hey, we're not going to add appreciation into our underwriting when we're looking at deals. We're going to write it in as the data shows us now, not based on 1% a month appreciation or however we've been seeing over the recent past, which I think is smart. You know, if the deal makes sense today, then, you know, maybe do it. But, you know, what we are seeing too is, and I've personally seen this on quite a few properties lately, is, you know, I make an offer on something and then, you know, you're competitive, it's based on the data, you have a relationship with the agent, and, you know, it looks like you're going to get this property. And then all of a sudden someone comes in 40, 50K higher, and you're running your numbers and you're scrambling and you're like, wait, whoa, what do you mean? There's no way, they're not going to make me money. That 50K that they offered over my offer was the profit that was going to get made on this deal. And then you do a little research on the buyers and you ask around town, like, hey, have you heard of this group? And what we're seeing is just a lot of either new investors or unknowns kind of get into the space and overpay, at least what we call overpaying. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, and neither do the people I talk to, but it seems like it's overpaying unless this sort of appreciation keeps going. And it's been so hot and so heavy, it's hard to really bank on that, at least in my opinion. Overwhelming themes, you know, let's not do a deal rather than do one too risky. And, you know, I think that's really sound advice. And one investor who's doing huge volume, I mean, they got 40 deals currently. You know, they're staying in a certain buy box, right? They've carved out their box of what they're buying. They're not going out of that box. Any contracts they get outside of that box, they wholesale the rest of them. And whether that's a risk or it's a location buy box, whatever that is, it's their buy box, and they're just going to simply wholesale the contract. And we're seeing pretty high wholesale fees right now. I personally paid $40,000 on a wholesale fee lately, and I've seen plenty even higher than that because the deal still made a lot of sense. So, but and you know, that was a very successful deal, but we're seeing a lot of that right now. So you mentioned a little bit about it, and I'm not going to get too into it, Aaron, but we're seeing the city of San Diego recently made it much easier to add density in San Diego if you're willing to rent constrain to moderate or low income housing. And we're talking a massive increase in density, like potentially unlimited number of units if you're willing to guarantee low income. And the parking requirements have been loosened tremendously as well. So there is a big opportunity in this, assuming you can make it pencil. Now, I've had some conversations with people, well, you know, cool, we can add 20 more units, but they're not going to have any parking. There's not going to be any common space. It's going to be a really crammed unit. Are people still going to want to rent it? And it seems like the overwhelming theme we're getting is, yeah, because that product doesn't exist. There is no new B-class rentals that are new to the market, and all the construction is in luxury. And right now we're seeing a little bit of a pullback on the luxury rental market, especially in downtown San Diego. Downtown is essentially being evacuated. The rental prices have gone down there a lot. And so if you can find a way to take advantage of some of this new density options that the city of San Diego has added to moderate or low income housing, there's a huge play there. Also, now I want to shift into the ADUs because it kind of goes into the density and the zoning changes here. So, you know, I want to give a shout out to Ruland Design Group. They've got multiple of my ADU projects going, and they gave me a lot of their time recently to go sift through some of this recent legislation. And so I had some notes to talk to everyone here about tonight. And so things just changed like a week and a half ago, and I believe that was statewide. and there is still a bunch of gray area, and it's still being deciphered and interpreted in San Diego and almost every municipality, I imagine. So it's what just happened was a bunch of things just changed down the pike in the ADU space. And in San Diego, we have 20 plus municipalities here, and each one of them interprets the state law slightly differently. And if you can remember, ADUs are 3 years old at the most, right? January 17th, 3 years ago, was when this whole thing started. So right now, it's still kind of the Wild West, and things are being interpreted differently. And being on the forefront of this and being in front of some of these curves is going to create some massive opportunity for people. So a couple friends of mine, one of their civil engineers, they sat down lately with the building department here in San Diego, got a bunch of information, and essentially it's determined that they still don't know what they determined. It was just, there was a lot of stuff that seems like this is going to be cool, but no one's willing to give you like a green light. Obviously, until you submit a set of plans, throw all the reviews, and you can get a preliminary review, but you're already pregnant with the deal at that point. So, so it's just been pretty interesting. So, a couple key points that I took away from all this. If you are going to be doing an ADU project, it's much easier to get an existing area permitted as an ADU than it is to get a non-existing or non-conforming area or space permitted as a habitable living space for an ADU. So for instance, you have a detached garage that was permitted. That's much easier to get through the gates rather than a Home Depot shed that was just kind of scabbed onto the back that you now want to have as an ADU. I got quite a few ADU projects personally in the city as we speak. And what I will tell you is that it is not quick, right? Part of this whole ADU thing initially was, hey, this is going to be faster to get your permits processed than any other sort of development that we're gonna look at. But that's not true. Months and months through the ringer, and even if you have a slight plan change, it's forever to get any sort of answer. For instance, I have one project right now. I bought a duplex, converted the detached garage to a third unit, and we made a very, very small plan change. That unit is completely built. It is sitting there ready to go, all systems in, and you have utilities. I don't have the meter yet, but I don't have the address yet. I have utilities because I'm piggybacking off the front unit, but I can't get an address and I can't get a final certificate of occupancy, even though the thing is completely ready to go. Because the building inspector simply needs to have the city look at the plan change, even though the building inspector recommended this. So it's just a lot of little things, and we've had this back in there now for almost 3 months, but we're seeing very slow things happen right now. And now another big deal is City of San Diego, absolutely zero parking requirements now for any ADU. That there is no restrictions now on that. So if you're going to build an ADU, you don't have any parking requirements. It used to be that it needed to be near a transit zone or within a mile from a high priority transit area, but that has since loosened. Another interesting deal here is that you can now have a primary residence with an ADU and then a junior ADU on site as well. So you can essentially, this is big for someone who's living in their own home, their primary residence, create a second unit along with a junior ADU, and that unit you have to be owner occupied. This is an owner occupied exemption, but a homeowner could have just gone from a primary residence to 2 more income producing residences on their same lot, and that's really big. Couple more, Aaron, you mentioned this on a little bit, but this is really cool. So you can potentially add 2 new ADUs on your property, and there's a 25% rule. And so essentially, let's just say you have, and this applies to some small multifamily as well. So let's say you have a fourplex. Well, you now have the ability to take 25% of that. So that would be 1 unit. You can add 1 more unit to your fourplex. And assuming that you have a non-habitable existing attached space, so you have a garage or something like that, boom, you can now convert a 5th unit. And if you have the extra space on your lot, you can now add 2 more detached units, assuming you have the enough room for the proper floor area ratio and setbacks, and maybe the parking requirements, and assuming that applies to that lot. So essentially, you could go from 4 units now to almost 7. To 7 units if you have the right setup on your lot. So there is a lot that can be done with this, and it seems like you're gonna really need some really good consultation on this, a really good civil engineer, really good architect, and really do your homework, because, you know, a big caveat here is, you know, this is still kind of gray area, and so do your own due diligence, but it's seeming like there's some opportunity here for those that are willing to dig a little bit, find the right property, and then do their diligence and take a little risk. So, you know, this is really cool stuff. And lastly, on the ADUs, so the city of San Diego now, they have 30 days from actually 2 weeks ago, so almost 2 more weeks, to release their updated bulletin, which highlights their changes and how it's going to be interpreted. So we're going to see more here in the next couple of weeks in San Diego as to exactly how all this is going to get dialed in. But it's exciting, and there's opportunity, and these are the ways to create a bunch of equity and value add, in my opinion. And if you're going out there looking to buy a house to flip or a property to flip, or you want potential multiple exit strategies, which give you a little bit more safety when you're buying, like, to me, a project like this has that margin and has other options for you in case something were to happen in the marketplace. Really quick, couple more things here, guys. Property managers. I talked to managers around the county with thousands and thousands of doors, and they're averaging between 93 to 98% collection rates, and none of them really seem to have too many issues collecting rent right now. The smaller groups, the smaller management companies were actually closer to 100%. It was the ones with 1,000+ doors that were in that 93 to 94% range. The mom and pop property manager is struggling through all this. And I know this was talked about earlier, but we're seeing that with COVID protocols, with laws, that are taking place now because of COVID, contracts, et cetera. You know, the whole entering a unit thing has changed now. You need PED forms, you need masks, you need anyone that's coming in to sign these documents. So the mom and pop property manager is really not up to date on a lot of these things. And one common thing we were seeing was slower lease up and longer on market activity. So it was a little harder to lease up these buildings than it was before. Last thing, guys, I talked to a bunch of real estate agents in town. We're talking some of the top producers in San Diego County, and it all kind of boiled down to a couple things, really. It's listings are the key right now. If you're an agent and you can get a listing, it's sold. And it's an easy commission check, right? You don't have to do too much outside the box marketing right now to get these properties sold. If you're a buyer's agent, on the other hand, you're having so much trouble finding properties for your clients. It is just so difficult to find inventory. And you look at your time ROI spent with buyers right now, and it is not very high. So we're seeing buyers coach their clients into some pretty outrageous tactics. And sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to get the deal these days. So buyers are stepping up their game a little bit in terms of what they're having to offer. So we're seeing a huge activity in the 600 to 900K price point right now. It's just on fire in San Diego. And so if you have anything in that zone, like I said earlier, it's reasonably priced. And even if it's not reasonably priced, you're probably still going to get offers right now. But it's overall, guys, San Diego is hot. And the last thing Aaron wanted me to mention was like the Compass concierge program, and it's capital essentially that the brokerage I work for, Compass, is willing to give to a homeowner unsecured to increase the value of their home through renovations before we list the property. So essentially, we just need a listing agreement, and we're going to give you up to 5% of your list price in cash to not in cash, but to your vendors to increase the value of your home through curb appeal, through upgrades, et cetera, and boom, put it on the market. And it's been extremely successful. And the actual amount of money you put into that program, it contracted a little bit back in March when COVID happened, but it's now back up to higher than it was before. So overall, you guys, it's just been hot down here. Thanks again to Jerry Ryan and Brian Daly, the Real Report, for all your data and stuff on this, guys. You guys are awesome. It's just, I'm really happy to be surrounded by so many awesome people here. And again, Aaron, thanks for everything. And if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, please start filling up the question pipeline. We will get to them. Great job, you and Linska. Dad, if you can go on mute, I'm going to have a question for you. Quick breather, really quick, while we prepare Kathleen Kramer as we march up to Orange County. A few things just real quick. Accessory dwelling units. Don't be a cram lord. That's the concept of cramming so many properties on a lot that you actually ruin livability and quality of life. I highly recommend using a design professional so you don't do that. I was called a month ago by a San Diego investor that told me about this expansion, and she wanted to build 7 new units because it was a large lot on what was a single family residence. I cringed a little bit and laughed and thought that was sort of fun. I am very personally excited about modular homes. I think with we're having a hard time with construction anyway. The cost, the increase in lumber. I just think it's where it's going. Even national builders are having to look at factory built housing or units to fill demand. Triplexizing, something that Derek mentioned, where you do have to live in one of the properties, but you could have a detached and a junior accessory dwelling unit. That is something, look it up. It's pretty interesting. And just watch for upzoning. There's so many interesting opportunities in the mix. Dad, what do you think about ADUs? You've never really told me either way if you're if you like it or you don't.
No, I do.
Okay.
I talked to Mike O'Neill about it, and he said his concern was, and he has, quite a few rental properties. He said that he thought it might change the tenant willingness to be in the front unit now that they're going to have someone in their backyard. So I don't know that if you have a tenant in the main house and you say, guess what, you're going to have a neighbor that's going to be in your backyard, that may cause some friction. If they both exist at the same time, let's say they were both vacant and that's the way it was from scratch, then probably no impact. But that was his only concern. So asking Mike, would he put ADUs in his backyard? The answer was no.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you have the owner occupied in 5 years issue. And if we're going down this road politically so much, it's all, you got to think a little bit more long term.
Okay. All right. Kathleen Kramer, Orange County, and some investing background in notes. Welcome to the program, and you are up next if you want to share your screen. I did want to say that, Derek, thank you for covering the Compass. Realty announced this week their version of the iBuying program that they're going to be coming out with. I just had the opportunity with the Data Driven Real Estate podcast to interview David, the CEO of Homevestors brand. And as you all know, they're the We Buy Ugly Houses. I'm calling iBuyers the We Buy Easy Houses brand. Please pay very close attention to what they're doing in your backyard. I think they're in almost every county that's being represented here tonight. They're taking down the easy ones. They're doing a terrible job on the rehabs, and they've already admitted because of the open door SEC forms that they're losing money a lot of the time, and they're doing very little by way of the repairs. And their buy box is shrinking. They're going after newer, low-hanging fruit. So just be aware. They're going to go after the easy ones. Investors going after the ugly stuff. You should be fine. All right, Kathleen, it's all you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate being here. It's an honor to speak at I Survived Real Estate. And hey, Bruce, good to see you. And I'm just grateful I didn't have to go on right after Lenska. Good job, Lenska. It was a very lively presentation, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So hopefully I don't bore you to tears with my data-driven real estate presentation here, but I am going to share my screen and go from here. And I too have a photo of us at I Survived, which you'll recognize some of these characters. And I'm here tonight to represent NSDREI, which I'm very proud to do. We are the Orange County Real Estate Investors Association, founded by Karin Hall that you see there on the left, and you'll recognize the bloke there in the middle. And yes, we're going on our 7th year. And I Survived Real Estate. I I have to ask Karin how many years we have been attending I Survived. I missed the first year. I think I was at home with my daughter who had just been born. And I kind of put my head in the sand when the market crashed in late 2008. And thank God for my little girl, because that was just my focus. And it got me through the last crisis. So hopefully we're better prepared for this one. But Aaron asked me tonight to talk about the pulse in Orange County, which I will do. And my husband and I are note investors. So I'm going to share a little bit of color with you about the note industry, what's going on right now for the ground level investor, if you will, not so much at the hedge fund level, but at the ground level, and some ideas for what to look for and where to look for opportunities. So that's my talk tonight. I wanted to invite you to come to OC REIA now that we're all doing Zoom so eloquently in our pajama bottoms and our fancy tops. I wanted to let you know that we do meet every second Thursday of the month at 5 o'clock Pacific, and it is on Zoom. It is free. Isn't that great? Don't real estate investors love that price? Free, they do. Upcoming topics are a note panel, ADUs, which it's interesting that we're talking about ADUs. And of course, our very own Bruce Norris will be joining us in a couple of months to give us his insights into what to look for the new year. So at our meetings, we generally go a couple of hours. We do a market update, which I have been doing now for 6 years, and Karin hasn't kicked me out yet. So I guess I'll continue. Deal profile, and then we have the main speaker. So OC REIA, we have seen a tremendous change since COVID. So if you've been to our club, you know that we had about 50 or 60 people, maybe up to 200 when Bruce was in town. But now we regularly have 200 to 300 people on the line every month. And it's fantastic. We have really seen a growth spurt in our club over this COVID episode. So maybe we learned a little something from having to change gears. And so we're happy for that. So grateful. A little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for 30 years. It says 25, but I don't really want you to figure out how old I am. So I'll say 25. I've closed about $1 billion in transactions. I started as a loan officer. I'm reformed from that category now. No longer do loans. Then I got into apartment broker transactions. So did a lot of those. And then I retired for a couple of years. So now I'm an investor, a broker, a lender. My husband and I are partners in a company that invests in non-performing second notes. Oh my gosh, how crazy are we? So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And of course, I love to speak in public and on Zoom meetings now, apparently. And I have a bachelor's degree in economics from UC Santa Barbara. And I can tap a keg if you ever need me to come over. I can help you with that too. So anyways, if you need to reach me, you can try me at my email address or on LinkedIn. I like to live on LinkedIn. I'm not so much of a Facebook or an Instagram gal, but LinkedIn seems to be my speed. There's the legal disclosures. And so tonight, I think Aaron asked us to really talk about taking the pulse of the club. So I want to talk about what are the main concerns of our club members. And I think the number one burning question is, did the government drop enough money on us to help us through a recovery? Are tenants going to be able to pay the rent? Are landlords going to be able to pay the mortgages? And are we going to have a huge crash in single family thing, or their wholesalers? So a lot of the concern seems to be around the single family market and the apartment market. So a lot of mom and pop investors in the apartment market locally. Of course, we know that a lot hinges on employment. So I pulled this right off of the EDD website today, as a matter of fact. And if you look at the very bottom down there where the blue arrow goes in, I think I'd draw your attention to the year over year change in the total amount of jobs lost in the leisure and hospitality industry in California. And so we're looking at a phenomenal sea change in that segment of the market, employment market. And of course, those people are mostly renters, not all. And in fact, in California, we know that we have 0.2 million people living here, all moved to Texas yet. Okay, so, or Florida, Bruce. Our Orange County workforce is about 1.5 million, a little over that. Out of that workforce, we have a 1.42 million employed, and unemployed is 142,000 as of September. So 9% unemployment. However, on the 15th of October, Disneyland announced that they're laying off 28,000, which is huge. So I think if you're an investor doing wholesale deals or you're looking for distress in Orange County, you probably ought to go to Anaheim because its net of Disneyland is tremendous. So they're one of the major employers in Orange County, and this is going to have a significant effect on rents, ability to collect rents, and also some single family owners in the Orange County marketplace. So that puts the estimate, if you add those 28,000 to our unemployment, that puts our unemployment rate at over 10%, which is obviously going the wrong way. By the way, the EDD also is telling us that the median income, which Bruce will appreciate me including this statistic, I think, is 69,000. So median numbers can be misleading, however. And if you look at the median home price in Orange County, so there's a lot of numbers on this chart. So I'm going to try to clarify it for you here. So in September of 2019, our median home price in Orange County was 830,000. It's gone all the way up to 915,000 as of this September. So just a year later, you're looking at a significant increase in the median home price. However, in May, it was just 834,000. So what happened? So if you look at the green bars on this chart, these are the luxury closed sales, luxury being defined as 1.25 million and over. And what happened is a lot of people that were working in LA County left LA County and moved to Orange County because it's safer here. And it's a little bit less restrictive as far as the lockdown orders. So when you talk about New York, for instance, and the flight out of the city, and you think about San Francisco and the flight out of the city, we also have a similar situation from LA to Orange County. And so our luxury home number of transactions increased significantly over the last few months. So will this trend continue? That is a burning question. However, it would not surprise me to see that median home price go back down to about 850. Why do I say 850? Because if you look at January on this chart, 850 COVID lockdowns started to occur. And I do acknowledge that we have a lot of demand. In fact, I have some numbers on that, but significant changes in the makeup of our buyers. And so we pulled a lot of the luxury homes out of the marketplace. But I don't think that that's a trend that's going to continue on the long term. I think the people that have decided to move are going to move, and they've moved. How long does that continue? That is up for debate. So that's something to watch in Orange County. Here's a little bit more about our actual figures and our numbers. Listing inventory is at the lowest that it's been in several years, since 2012, actually. And so we did just under 4,000 transactions as far as homes that are listed on the market. And so that is significantly lower. And if you see the demand, those are pending sales. You can see that nice V shape there. It's flattening off a little bit, but that's to be expected. Here's a little bit more data for you data wonks out there. We have just over 4,000 currently active in the marketplace. That's the lowest that it's been since 2012. Days on the market is 40. which again is the lowest that it's been since 2012. And if you take a look at our expected market time, you can see that from even in the 1.25 to 1.5 million marketplace, we've gone from 118 days to 55 days. And significantly in 1.25 million, we went from 109 days this time last year to 42 days. So crazy what's going on. So here are the inventory changes. 6,400 units last year, 4,100 this year, 35% less. Pending sales, 2,300 last year, 3,100 this year, 36% higher. Closings, 2,500 to 3,100 this year, 23% more closings September over September. And price to list is 98.8. So this is no surprise to anyone who lives in California or understands our market. People are very hot, interest rates being low. Distress in the marketplace, definitely not yet. So we're not seeing it. We may see it coming. We'll see. So certainly not in the MLS, right? The number of foreclosures is nominal. The amount of resales with equity is very, very high. It's really not much to talk about on the distress side. How many sales are off market? So if you're seeing distress in the marketplace, most likely it's not going to hit the MLS, right? So thinking about that, how many off-market transactions do we have versus what we had in years past? So the green line is 2020, and you see that we have less off-market transactions than we've had in years. So we'll see, and this is a very important number, I think, to watch, because if there is going to be opportunity in our marketplace, it's so let's look at affordability. And according to the EDD, our median income is $69,000, but I think that most of us could agree that home buyers these days are counting on a two-income household. So I'm doubling that number for my illustration. Our median price, again, I'm taking $850, even though the number is a little higher right now. 30-year fixed rate interest rate, I'm just rounding it off to 3%. Let's just say you don't have a perfect credit score, you know, and you're not putting 30 or 40% down. So let's say your interest rate's going to be 20% down. You better have a pretty nice truckload of cash to buy a house in Orange County. 80% loan is $680. That's well under the conforming loan limit. Payment would be $2,867. Taxes and insurance adds about another $1,000. You're at about $3,800 PITI, which qualifying income at a 42% debt ratio, if you're debt free, would be about $9,100 a month or $110,000 a year. If you have two income households earning $69,000 a piece, you're going to have room to run. So can our market continue to run higher if interest rates stay low? Yep, it can, as long as those higher income wage earners don't lose their jobs. So that would be my assessment on the Orange County marketplace right now. Now, there are some lower end homes in Anaheim. There are a lot of apartments, especially a lot of apartments that have been owned by mom and pop owners for a long period of time in the Anaheim, Buena Park area. I think North Orange County could be an interesting marketplace for people to watch for NODs on apartments and try to buy the debt and get in on the DL on that, the down low. We've already covered this quite a bit. You like that, Aaron? And just in case you didn't know what DL meant. So when will Orange County correct? Well, let's look at the political risk. Okay, this has been covered already tonight, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I can tell you that a lot of this will become a little bit clearer after the election next week. Are we going to have a split tax roll? Are we going to limit parent to child transfers of tax basis? Will we have legislated or voter approved rent control? And then also, what is the national tax policy? So I know we brushed on this in the earlier segments, but I want to mention that the Biden tax plan, an important part of the Biden tax plan. So with that, we understand that that could be a significant change for real estate investors. I spoke with Debbie at Exchange Resources. Debbie Bannister, she's been there for 20 years. She's a vice president at Exchange Resources. She said, almost without exception, the exchanges that she's doing right now are people moving money out of California. They're selling a California transaction, moving that money out of state. So there's a little bit of anecdotal information for you. Here's some apartment data I think is interesting. It compares this comes from Yardi Matrix. They're a software company and a data conglomerator in the apartment space. So that just shows rent growth and forecasted year over year. You'll see the Inland Empire still has rent growth according to Yardi Matrix. In Orange County, we're seeing a little bit of deterioration in rents with a forecast of that to increase. Job growth is decreasing, as we mentioned, and we have some completions coming on. So we do still have some new inventory coming to the market with occupancy at about 95%. And this is a chart of rent growth in LA, Orange County, and Inland Empire. You could see that according to this chart, we still have a little bit of growth, and this is segmented by A class, B class, and C class. One of the things that is very important, and this is going to be important in Orange County also, is how many of the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA insurance plans actually convert back to full payments. So again, watching this in the Orange County marketplace, and it's going to be very important to see if these investors or these buyers, I guess, or borrowers who have mortgages, if they actually start paying again. I highly recommend you go to blackknightinc.com and you check out their monthly report that they have on the forbearances. They break it down very nicely by category and then also by dollar amount and volume. So now I have a personal bet on this. I think Fannie and Freddie, FHA and VA, I can't speak for the banks themselves and their portfolio loans, but I think that the government agencies are going to have a refinance program after they stop taking new forbearances due to COVID. And I think they're going to do something very similar to HARP, where they allowed a very low qualifying, very low bar refinance, rate and term, no cash out, rate and term refinance to add these deferred balances back into the main principal balance of the new loan and refinance all these loans out. It just clears the balance sheets. It clears up all the bond issues. It clears up so many issues for Fannie, Freddie, and FHA. And it gives everybody a reassurance that we can all go forward. I'd be very surprised if we didn't see something like that as soon as they declare the emergency over, that is. As we know, more people this cycle have equity in their home. So this chart is talking about how many people have equity, and 80% of homeowners have more than 20% equity. Where is the distress? So if we're seeing distress, where is that? It's primarily, this is from the Mortgage Bankers Association, it's primarily in the retail and in the lodging segments of the commercial backed securities. So I know you're going to cover a lot of this on your commercial segment in a week or so. But the banks are preparing for commercial defaults, and this goes into the note business. So Wells Fargo set aside $6 billion last quarter for loan losses, and that's important. And the credit standards are tightening. And the Mortgage Bankers Association prepares a chart every month, and the mortgage credit availability is tightest it's been since 2012. So this is important to watch, especially for private note lenders. This is good for private note lenders because if people can't go to the bank to get a loan, what do they have to do? Well, they have to come to us, right, Bruce? They need us again. And so originations on new first mortgages should be an interesting area to watch, especially as these credit quality gets tighter and tighter with the defaults increasing. ATOM did a really interesting chart about predictions of how many foreclosures we're actually going to see. So I'd refer you back to them. Here's a chart that they also prepared, which you could look up online, about how many defaults and how many foreclosures did we actually have from 2005 to 2012. And so you could compare that to the predictions, and then that might give you an idea or an understanding of where you think the market might go in the single family space. So pulling it all together, I do think that there are opportunities in notes in 2021. So where do I think those opportunities are? I think that there is going to be some single family distress, but you're going to have to pick those deals up between the notice of default and the sale date, especially in California with all the new regulation. So if you can subscribe to something like Property Radar or County Records Research, and you can get a hold of those NOD transactions and when they occur, and then track down who owns those notes, I think there'd be a great opportunity for note investors to buy those notes at a discount from people that don't want to have to bother to take those deals through foreclosure process. So this is a good space. And that's the first note deal that my husband and I did about 4 years ago. We did that. We pulled a deal from a private Benny off of County Records Research, and we took it through to foreclosure, and it was a good deal for us. So I think that's going to be more and more prevalent. You're going to see some apartment distress, especially mom and pop buyers who bought maybe at a 3 cap or a 4 cap at the peak of the market. And now they don't have enough reserves, or they just don't have the will to take it through to the end because it's so complicated. The eviction process is a disaster in California. And so, there's a lot of opportunity there. Now, if you're Johnny Warbucks or Daddy Warbucks and you have a lot of money in your pocket, then I think you could go after hotel and retail repurposing, because I think there's opportunity there too, but those are high dollar ticket investments. So, you're going to have to team up or get into some kind of a structured investment. But there is opportunity repurposing these hotel properties and some retail properties. And the rest, I think you can probably read. We're still buying non-performing notes. My husband's business, they're still looking at pools. There's still a lot of transactions being done. We modify the loans that are in our pools, and then we sell them to other hedge funds. And there's still hedge funds buying those notes from us. And we're pretty much back to the pricing structure that we were before COVID hit. There was a little pause. And of course, we have some foreclosure moratorium still going on in several states. So that slows things down a little bit. But at any rate, if you want to hear more about all that, then join us at NSDREI over the next few months. And we're going to have a note panel. We're going to talk about ADUs. We're going to have Bruce come and visit us. And of course, it's the best price of all. It's free. So please come and join us. And again, I want to thank Aaron and Bruce for having me. And thank you, Karin, for always putting your faith in me and NSDREI and letting me give you the market updates. I really do appreciate that. And that's all I've got. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Bruce.
Kathleen, I love that prediction. Just so you know, at Property Radar, I have to follow all the distressed and the NODs, and there's nothing to talk about. They're not happening. And I think the federal government, with a nationwide issue like this, I completely agree. They're going to do something in the back end. And I am further going to predict that I do not see them bringing back the risk premium I would be surprised if they do that at the very end of the year. It sort of penalizes the people that really need it, and it's more money in their pockets. So why charge people more to get a lower interest rate? It just doesn't politically sound like that's going to work for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they really stepped in it right there when they tried to push that through. And of course, it depends. I don't want to get in the political weeds. It depends on what the next administration is. Because of course, the reason they were doing that is because they want to recapitalize those agencies and take them back private. But I think the timing really stunk, and you shouldn't go tacking on a 0.5 point fee to every refi in the middle of a pandemic. It would have been much smarter for them to start with an 1/8 and then go with another 1/8 and then phase it in over time, and nobody would have even noticed. But crazy times, and nobody's perfect. They'll get it right the next time, I hope.
Oh,
But so much, Aaron. Thanks, Bruce. And I'll be around for questions later if you guys want.
I definitely, we are a little bit behind, but we know we're probably going to go closer to 9 tonight, everybody. So no stress about the questions. Up next is Christina Suter, representing the Los Angeles area, and why she gets ready. Dad, any thoughts so far about what we've covered? Everybody was really given the task. You have about 20 minutes, and thank you, guys are doing great. It's a lot of information packed in. A lot of these presentations could very easily be an hour or more. So I appreciate the data dump.
I completely agree on the how the foreclosure is going to be a non-issue. They're going to figure it out. Plus, these people have a lot of equity. So even if they were aggressive and went to trustee sale, they wouldn't reach the bank. They wouldn't become an REO very often. But I don't think there's any appetite for that. I really don't.
Okay. All right, Miss Christina, you are up. Thank you for being here. The Pasadena FIBI, longtime supporter, and really glad you're here.
Thank you, Aaron. It's good to be here. Thank you, Bruce. It's good to see you, of course, from Florida. I can't give you a hug, but that's okay. You'll survive, as we all survived real estate, right? So thank you. It's nice to be here. I tried to make it a 15-minute presentation. Try to keep it concise and to the point. So I'm going to actually see what we can do here. And Aaron, you'll keep me on task, I suspect. Yes, very good. All right, let me share my screen. Go here, go here, slideshow. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing is, to me, I wanted to sort of touch on, like, I love I Survived. I love the constant movement that you guys are tracking in real estate. I love investing in real estate. I love what the Norris Group stands for. And I feel really appreciative that you guys include me on this I Survived panel tonight. So thank you for that. But it's really, to me, it's what you guys give to the community as a whole. You guys give a clear voice of integrity. You give support for investors, for all of us investors. As I've teased many times, I didn't get the 2006 memo from Bruce, which I wish I had. So that was my big learning curve of the not following the Norris Group. So that was part of why I'm such an avid supporter, because there's a whole community that you guys are supporting, whether it's those of us who are here on this panel, or all of the people who are listening to this, or all the people who will be logging into this and listening to it as a podcast later. So thank you for all that you do, both for, Make-A-Wish, as well as for us as a community. So thank you for putting this together, Aaron, and not letting it slip in this year of COVID. All right, so let's talk a little bit. I'm going to start a little bit bigger and work my way down. That's how my brain works. So you guys are stuck with it. So in June of 2020, there was a lot of concepts and a lot of questions going around, sort of like predictions of, where are we going to be? So, in March, it was the COVID lockdown was declared, and all of a sudden everybody's in upset, and we have all these predictions of how life is going to get horrible or not, right? So the gross domestic product at that point was 5%. The Congressional Budget Office projected that COVID would create a potential loss of 3% of GDP. And if you just do some simple math, you'll see that 3% of GDP is 7.9 trillion of our annual GDP. And I think that number is important because I'm going to reference it back later. The projected highest areas of losses was leisure, services in general, hospitality and retail. And really the loss is directly related to the length of what the shutdown was going to be. And there was as Linska said so well, like, is it going to be a W? Is it going to be a V? Is it going to be being a K? Like, what is this length of shutdown going to create for us? And what can we survive? At least in my thinking as an investor, that's where my head is going, is the shape of the shutdown is going to define the actual losses in both unemployment and therefore in real estate. Because what does real estate house? Real estate houses jobs. So I'm focused on unemployment and what does it mean as far as losses, as well as general loss inside of one's savings account, and whether that's a worker over who's a Starbucks or whether that's somebody who works at Bank of America or somebody who works at Apple, what is it going to be their losses? So the S&P 500 at the time was 3,000 with a high of 3,300 up till that time. And unemployment was projected by UCLA possibly being 13%. And Shadow Statistics was saying, no, we think unemployment is going to be 35%. That was the projections. Hey, Shadow Stats, what do you want, Aaron? Right? So of course I can't hear you, but I'm guessing at what you're talking about. Right? So I'm just laying out a bunch of data on, well, here's what we thought was going to happen, but that isn't really what happened. And I want to kind of walk it through a little bit to get a sense for what we thought was going to happen, what is happening, and maybe just for a moment at the end go, well, what does it mean going forward, right? So here's what happened to GDP. Here's the reality of what happened inside of GDP. And let me see if I can get this box out of the way because I'm concerned you can't see. So here's the reality of what happened in GDP. So we were in 2019, right? Early 2020, 2%. We were hoping to see, inflation's considered above 2%. We want 2%. That's considered healthy for the environment and the economy. Is it 2% GDP growth? We want to see at least that much. And we were. But now here comes July of 2020, and we have a negative 9% for that quarter. And it's important we understand that that's a quarter, that's not the year, right? Negative 2.9%, according to the Bureau of Economics. I didn't make this up. I'm just telling you where I pulled it from, right? That's what they put forward. So are we on track for a negative 3% GDP, which would be a loss of 7.9 trillion? We might be. We don't have enough data yet, but we might be. Then the Washington Post, right? We talk about what's going to be most affected, what businesses are going to be most affected, where we're going to lose that loss in GDP. And really we see that there's like event planning, automotive, beauty, retail and shopping, which we're not surprised about, and restaurants, which we're not surprised about. And so we are seeing small business closures. In May, I haven't seen more recent data than May, but if anybody's got it, please send it to me. Right? Then we have actual unemployment to date. Now, I want you to take a look at this unemployment because if you can see here, I'm trying to move my box out of the way, you can see that, wow, unemployment hit, right? 15%. But then it dropped again, this is nationally, to 7.9%. And I'm not overly surprised by that data. It kind of mirrors the GDP we saw, right? There is this huge movement of loss of GDP, huge movement of loss of jobs, and yet these jobs showed up again somehow. Yet, if you look at Los Angeles, right, the LA County, we see 15% in September and 16% in August. So our unemployment isn't 7.9% in Los Angeles. We have a greater, I didn't put the social economics up here, but we have a greater diversity in Los Angeles County. And we have as many waitresses as we have people who work for, Facebook or Google over in Culver City, right? So that's what we're seeing in Los Angeles. If we look at Fred, we're looking at the S&P. S&P, even though we had this huge loss, here's our 33. But notice the new high was 35,000. So I'm seeing some inconsistencies in the data. I'm looking for an answer. I'm going to suggest an answer, but I'm looking for well, what is really happening? So how is this possible? My answer, federal aid, right? Basically, if we take the number I put out, right, which is if we lose 3% of our GDP annually, not quarter by quarter, but annually, that's 7.9%, 7.9 trillion, just math. I could be wrong in my math, but it's around there. What made the difference? Well, we've handed out about 3.5 trillion in aid of different kinds. Take 7.9, take away 3.5, it makes the gap shorter, smaller. And it makes sense how the timing of the PPP loans and the EIDL, all of these programs that are being put out are making a difference in supporting what we projected was going to be truly hard and difficult and started to show up that way. But there's a floor underneath it called government support. So what is that showing? How is that showing up? Well, the real estate in reality is that it's actually showing up in that people aren't perceiving themselves as strapped as they would have been, or we would have projected if there wasn't this government support. And an unintended effect. To me, it's an unintended effect. I first noticed this effect when I got phone calls from my daughter's school's moms saying, guess what, we're moving. Guess what, we're moving. I'm like, you're moving in the middle of COVID? Why are you moving in the middle of COVID? Explain to me how you could be moving in the middle of COVID. Nobody's supposed to be doing open houses. Well, if we're going to be locked in the city, we want more square footage. If we're going to be locked in our home, we want a different place to be. I mean, it was like just like a pressure that built up in people that said, we're relocating to a new city for a better lifestyle. And they moved to Temecula, they moved to Solvang, they didn't leave California, but they moved to a different place. And so here's what we're seeing in the actual California housing market, sales and price. So we're seeing there's an increase, right, of existing homes, an increase in existing home sales, right? We're seeing prices have gone up by 17% in California, right? We're seeing that unsold inventory is 2 months, which, as we know, is definitely a seller's market and not a buyer's market. And we're seeing median days on market is 11. So this is basic numbers are saying people are not as economically strapped as we thought. They're not as afraid of buying homes because there's a lot of homes that are being sold, but it's not the buying that's afraid. I think it's the sellers who are more afraid. They don't want people walking through their home with COVID while they're living there. So I've seen more homes on the market that have been rehabbed and are empty than I generally see on the market. I'm seeing the demand is I want to move. I'm uncomfortable as long as I'm in lockdown. So the demand has increased, but the supply has gone down. And we're seeing it in the numbers. Los Angeles housing chart, right? So this is the long chart from Fred. I always like using the long-term chart, but you can see it continued to go up here at the very tail end, 2019, 2020. I find this chart interesting because this is pending sales in Los Angeles. And here's the big drop in May of 2020. And then we're not happy, we're going to move, right? And the push up here showing that people were stalled, but then chose not to be. Days on market in Los Angeles is 43 days on market. There's an increase of 14% in Los Angeles County. And the price to list is 100.6, which means that when that's listed, it's generally, there are more times than not where it's going over the list price. Pasadena, so let's get specific to Pasadena since that's where I'm sitting is Pasadena. So the population of Pasadena is 141,000 people. It's the 41st largest city in California. So we're not that big, truth be told, we're not that small, but we're not that significant, right? 94th largest city in the United States. The median home price is 737,000. And yet the median household income, we would say, is about 80,000. And our industries are really medical. We have a lot of Kaiser here, educational, because we have universities here, professional services. So that's kind of Pasadena. This is info. But I had to steal this from a website because they wouldn't let me download it. So here you've got to cut and paste. So forgive me for that. But hey, I wanted to give you the data and I liked the way they put this data out. So you're stuck. All right. So really what I want you to take a look at is the difference between the red line and the blue line. Right. And this is basically price to list. And to me, it shows the pressure on the market. Right. So if we're seeing the median list prices, the red line moving right along here, just under 1 million, you can see the median sold price in May, just past May, started bumping up above. That's the price to list ratio went up. It pushed up again here. So we're seeing a lot of intensity and pressure in the Pasadena market. I've got, clients telling me they're putting in offers. Now they're saying they're going to multiples of 4 to 5, not 20 to 30. I remember when multiples were 20 to 30, but right now we're seeing 4 to 5, but it's enough. It's enough where we're seeing that the market prices are moving up. So right now, Pasadena inventory has been down has gone down 28% from last year. That's the inventory that's available. 49 median days on market, 15 weeks of increases in pending sales. So you can see the pressure in the Pasadena market has been as intense as it's been in the other markets. So let's get to moving forward. So I should be on time, right, Aaron? I should be moving. Okay. So let's go to moving forward for a minute. So I have this theory, and I'm going to tell you how I'm tracking this. Small businesses employ 49 to 53% of US workers, depending upon where you get the statistic from. 95% of small businesses, the official definition of small businesses is 500 employees or less. 95% of those small businesses that employ about, I'm going to say 50% of our workforce, hire 10 employees or less. So who are those people? Nail salons, barbershops, the dog kennel where I take my dog to get her washed and get her trimmed, right? The restaurants, right? These are the people that are small businesses. The coffee shop that's not a Starbucks. What concerns me is that we saw 100,000 people, 100,000 small businesses have closed since May. That's the May. Oh, there's my timer. 100,000 people have closed, 100,000 businesses have closed since May. We know that those small businesses, which generally don't have larger reserves, are hiring maybe 40 to 45% of our workforce. We're seeing larger employees starting to lay people off. What does this mean moving forward? Because real estate houses jobs. At least for me, as somebody who's owned rental real estate and been in residentials of different kinds almost my whole investment career. What does this mean moving forward? I'm thinking, as many of us are, that moving forward, it means that even though we're being held up by this support of the 3.5 trillion, and we're worried there's a potential gap in our GDP of 7.9 trillion, I'm worried that when the support stops, we're going to see a deficit in employers, not in people who want jobs, but people who are capable of hiring, because we've seen the losses in small businesses, and because we've seen the decentralization of larger businesses, and because we've seen even mid-size and larger businesses are laying employees off. When we take the Band-Aid off, that's what I'm concerned about when it comes to employment. Now, my concern is also an opportunity, right? Just as commercial notes is an opportunity and defaults on that is an opportunity, this is going to be an opportunity potentially in the rental markets, whether it's mom and pop rental units, which we've been talking about tonight, or whether it's people who own single families. I can't project. When I tried to project back in June, you saw what my statistics brought up. It didn't work. We had a whole bunch of money that got flooded into the system that completely hijacked my economic point of view. If you want to have, what is it? You want several different points of view, ask an economist their point of view. So I don't know where we're going to go moving forward, but I do know that what I'm tracking to help me monitor what I want to do as an investor is the effect on employment longer term. So FIBI Pasadena is my club. We are also free. We are also monthly, except for December. And you're welcome to come to our meetings via Zoom. We are continuing to do it via Zoom. And it's wonderful to be invited. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Christina. Just for everybody, isurviverealestate.com, and under speakers, you're going to see all the bios. And Joey, just a real quick shout out. I could not have pulled this off. He basically did everything. Joey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This would not have been possible this year without your help. Joey and I will make sure that all the clubs that we're talking about tonight, that they are linked on the I Survive Real Estate website. As you know, that has stayed up since 2008. We really appreciate all the speakers that have participated over the years. So we'll make sure to profile everybody. David, you are up next, and then we'll get into questions. So people, please start putting in your questions. We'll make sure to get to those. We want to get that Northern California perspective. It's really interesting hearing every area walking through and some challenges and some opportunities. Christina, while David's getting ready, your thoughts on, are you seeing in Pasadena, because you're on the outskirts, do you sense that a lot of people are exiting the downtown core, maybe Culver City? They're trying to get out of the urban environment and moving more towards you?
I'm not seeing it directly in people buying units here. I'm seeing people are moved, but yes, the answer is yes. I do see that trend, but I'm not sure their destination is Pasadena. I think their destination is a little further out. If we're gonna bother to move because we're too dense, we're gonna go further out where we can actually get acreage or get a much larger yard or be up against something that's pretty. I'm not seeing it push on Pasadena specifically.
Okay. All right, David, NorCal REIA, our sole Northern California representative this evening. Welcome and thank you for your long-term support. An extra shout out to David. I believe every year you have had a table and have come down to Southern California to be at the Nixon Library. And I just always appreciate that extra effort. And I'm just really glad you're here tonight.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate it. Let me get set up here. Let me go back. Technical difficulties. Uh-oh.
Are you frozen?
Yeah.
You know what?
Okay, let's see. There we go. I think we're coming.
You're coming?
There we go.
Able to share your screen?
Voila. We make it?
Yep, you're good.
Great. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm David Granzel. I'm the founder of NorCal REIA Investment Club. And as Aaron was saying, I've had the privilege of being with part of Bruce and Aaron, the Norris Group, for the last 13 years. We've made it through rain, through snow, through the Great Highway being closed and everything else. And I truly appreciate what you guys do. I've been with Make-A-Wish since 2002. So it definitely holds a place in my heart. So thank you very much. We couldn't have been able to do all the things we do without you guys. And all the relationships we built in this business from Southern California, all and throughout California. And there's a camaraderie, there's a synergy that you guys are part of in the core. So thank you. By the way, great presentations, everybody. I actually, while you guys were talking, rearranged my presentation to not duplicate some of these things. So thank you very much. I want to give you perspective and not duplicate the information that's already been covered. So as I said, we're celebrating our 16th year. It's a different format. I also want to thank all the men and women who have served our country to provide us the freedom we have today to invest as we do. At the club, our mission is to educate every level of investor to make calculated decisions and to create investment opportunities, whether it be wholesale, retail flips, or just being first-class landlords, and especially in this market. NorCal REIA is your platform to network with other real estate professionals, and it's been that way for the past 16 years. I'm going to run through some stats, and if you haven't been on his blog, it's Sacramento Appraisal Blog. Good friend of mine, Ryan Lundquist, tons of information, puts out a weekly blog and very detailed, especially in Northern California, Sacramento. As we heard, boy, if things are on fire in California, well, I'm not going to touch that one. Houses are selling like crazy in California. 20 days of housing supply in our region, 20 days. 41% are getting multiple offers this September. Unbelievable. Monthly inventory is lower than it's been in 15 years. 53% fewer listings in the region right now. 3.3% of those homes had made above the $1 million mark in 2020. And I'll touch on that in a moment. 9 fewer days to sell this September as opposed to 2019. I've listened to everybody. Most of you guys are in Southern California. $1 million mark is kind of an entry level mutt hut down there. But in Sacramento, that's a lot of money. So I'm going to go back to just 10 years ago. So in 2010, for $1 million sales, there's 83 of them. In 2020, there is 648 $1 million properties. I know, as Aaron said, you guys got to have a lot of cows, a lot of pastures out there. We actually do have some nice houses and we do have nice quality of life up here. But for us to hit the $1 million mark, truthfully, that's a high on our high end. But at the same time, it just shows you where people are moving from the Bay Area. They're trying to get out of there. And also the value of the property throughout California is flowing into Sacramento. I'm going to go with the Sacramento region, monthly data, September 29th. We had a month, September 2019. Our monthly supply was almost 2.2 months. We were less than a month, about 3/4 of a month, which is down 65%. As we were talking about every place else throughout all of our other speakers, everything in the inventory, there is nothing. If you have something on the market, you're thinking about selling, now's a good time, especially. I've been thinking now this atmosphere, we were talking about, I've talked to other investors, this atmosphere looks like it did before in the mid 2000s, as I heard the word frothy, and it makes you wonder what's going on. And we'll touch on that in a minute. Sacramento County, we're going to talk about the median price in Sacramento region. Median price was $420 in September of 2019. In September of 2020, it's almost $480,000, which is a 14% increase. Not bad for California. We're also going to touch on the median prices. As you can see, where it's gone in 2018, it's gone 385, I believe, all the way up to 475. Real estate forecast. Well, my crystal ball is absolutely inoperable. Can this go on forever? Absolutely not. People ask, is real estate still cyclical? I'm pretty sure it is, and we'll touch on that with Bruce. Does California still have ups and downs? Yeah. Is there a roller coaster ride in Santa Cruz Boardwalk? Yeah, there still is. My point there is California goes up and down. It just has. If everybody thinks it's going to go on forever, think this is a new normal. I'm not a gambling man, but I wouldn't count on it. As I was preparing for this presentation, I started thinking, whether it be walking, running, riding my bike, racing cars, you never look straight down. You're always looking as far ahead as possible. And that's one of the things I've learned in this business from a lot of mentors. And where are we going to go? And I've heard it before, is when everybody's heading north, go south and see if they left. There's going to be transactions going on. Matter of fact, one of the things I was looking at my property radar account to kind of figure out, okay, where are there going to be opportunities? And I think with all the chaos, being a landlord, I think there's going to be a lot of chaos in the apartment industry, without a doubt. Not everybody runs a tight ship, takes care of their tenants, and has the ability to have had most of their tenants pay. That being said, people can't go on having multi-units and not having people pay for a year. It's just not feasible to run a business like that. So some of the opportunities I see in the real estate is commercial. My question to a lot of my friends in the business, are you going to go back to working at your office? Not quite sure. I always have to laugh in our business. Is there a possibility of death, divorce, or don't got a job? How many people we've heard today? There's lack of jobs in all aspects. There are a lot of people we know in the restaurant industry, the service industry, the place where we have the events. We've been at the past 16 years. The general manager's down to 20 hours a week working, and all the staff from the sales and catering, the bar, the restaurant, everybody's gone. And that's also other jobs at a different scale. People sell their properties to solve problems, and it's not always about money. And that was what I learned coming into this business, and I still believe it's true to this day. So what I suggest to people out there, learn to become the best problem solver you can be, because that's what's going to happen. And money's involved, but it's not always the motive. Being prepared in real estate for 2020 and 2021, actually going forward. Landlording. One of the things I've heard from many people is trading up your less desirable properties. Opportunities with tired landlords, plenty of those. Unpaid rent for up to 12 months. California's no evictions. Think of all the deferred maintenance. If you're not bringing in income, some of my friends laugh. I regularly do maintenance on my properties. As a matter of fact, I did paint one of my buildings, half of it this year, but I would have done that no matter what. That goes along the way. That's just not deferring maintenance. As in California, as I understand it, throughout California, you can, at least in Sacramento, you can only raise your rent 6%. It was 8.75. Now it's down to 6%, and that's going to take a while to catch up if you don't have your rent's already up there. There may be no rent increase or move outs. We'll have to see what happens in next Tuesday. One of the things I heard earlier from some of the speakers, does it make sense for some people to carry the paper? Passive income. Some of these people that have these properties and all these things that I'm mentioning here just wears people out and landlords. And I've been blessed to have some great mentors, and I've learned how to take care of my tenants. Problem is a lot of landlords hadn't, and they've deferred maintenance. And I think this is going to be a great place for people that are looking to exit, that are tired of all the toilets, tenants, and trash, as Aaron always puts it, and having to deal with this. And it'd be a great place for them to say, hey, let's just say you collected half your rents last year. How about if we pay this for, here's what we can afford, or actually here's what the building can afford to pay. So I think going forward, that's going to be a great place to be. If you need any of these slides, you can go to our club, NorCalREIA.com, under free resources. All these slides are there. And one of the things I found in our business, I may not make a dent in the homeless problem, but I will make a difference in someone's life, because I and a lot of us here have the privileges when we come home, our garage door goes up. I deal with 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So from my perspective, when they get home and they open their door, that's their home. And I think that's what makes the difference in our lives, is being able to provide an opportunity for people and have a different perspective. So that's my presentation. If we can have any questions, we can go from there.
Fantastic. I do have some questions, and this will also involve Derek and Linska. First, I'm going to start with you, David. San Francisco, have you noticed a huge uptick in people coming your way and moving long term?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, there's been a lot of people. We were talking about the $1 million houses. And we've heard for decades that everybody from the Bay Area is coming up here with money. Well, that had stopped for a number of years. Now people realize they don't have to have an office, and they are moving up here. They're moving up to Sacramento, Granite Bay, Roseville, Rockin area. They're also moving up to Truckee. If you thought you had a piece of property, maybe like San Diego, but in Truckee, boy, if you come up with a number that is only a little bit crazy, people will buy it in 2 days. Unbelievable. Matter of fact, quiet Truckee, as I understand it, is not as quiet and peaceful. I wanted a second home up there, and I'm not quite sure I do anymore.
Sean made a funny comment on a show that we were, he predicted very early on that the second home markets would do very well. And he's like, yeah, people actually want to live there. It's just
Exactly.
like,
yeah.
No, he says that people are door knocking, offering $3 million in cash for some of the homes in Truckee, which I find interesting. Now, San Diego, I hear a rumor also, because some of the tech companies have said that they're no longer bound to stay in San Francisco, that working remote is going to be a forever thing, and that they are looking in specific markets like San Diego and Palm Springs, because it is close to airports, great quality of life at a lower price. Are you seeing that as well?
I would recommend let them all move to Palm Springs before May. Okay. And then they might sell again and move to San Diego. I really think San Diego is a little bit of a Zoom town, because, and somebody made the reference to, it is safer and it is this and that, and obviously quality of life. I mean, you know, who doesn't want to surf and have all the amenities San Diego have? But otherwise, we have, you know, people coming down from San Francisco for sure, and we do have some from LA coming down to San Diego as well. So, but in terms of anything goes, any properties. I mean, and Derek had it. It is actually, if it's not sold over the weekend, then something is wrong with your property under the power lines.
Dad, let's get you back involved. Maybe you've been writing some questions during all this, and please, panelists, this is the attendees, this is the first time we've ever been able to take questions. So make sure to leave it in the Q&A box for me. The chat, I've just been posting embarrassing things. So.
Did you want me to ask my question?
Yes, please.
What's everybody's opinion as to why this did not occur in 2019, when we had 4% unemployment, 32% affordability, no foreclosures to compete against, and we basically had a flat price market with the best set of charts I've ever seen, and now we have uncertainty. And I agree with the take that the unemployment number could be very different than what's being stated in a short period of time. I'm surprised. First of all, I was surprised it didn't happen in 2019 because every other time with those statistics and the lack of lack of foreclosure inventory, we were off to the races at 15% when we even said that. But since that didn't occur, something else is going on. So what about the pandemic kicked in a boom?
Christina, I will go with you first, and you're on mute.
I intentionally raised my hand so that others could, jump in as well, rather than, but I'll go first. I think I'm going to say there are two factors, and I'm going to go in reverse. First, I would say, in my opinion, the pandemic created this compression of, I don't like my house. I may or may not like my husband and my wife or my children being right on top of me. Right. And I'm just being, because to me it was surprising. I'm like, why are people moving? Like, literally, I was floored because we're not moving. We're avoiding everybody we can. There's no way I would imagine walking into a home to buy it. But I noticed it over and over and over again, this compression, this itchiness, this uncomfortableness. So the demand was created by the pandemic, and the supply was constrained by people going, I don't want people walking through my home while I'm living there. So I'm not going to put it on the market until I'm ready for it to be empty. And I'm seeing, I was just doing a condo research project with somebody on the West Side. Almost every condo I looked at was empty and had been staged, and you could tell had been staged and had been painted. And to me, that was unusual in that it wasn't like there was 3/4 of the condos were somehow existing people or, existing inventory that had some deferred maintenance to it or had different levels of completion. It was like 50% of them were finished and empty and staged. And I think that's an effect of the COVID. So that's one. Two, I think that the lending standards, I don't know for sure. I'm guessing, but Bruce, you probably actually know this better than I do. I would say the lending standards was keeping more of a cap on the market than it has in the past during those compressed numbers. But honestly, Bruce, I think you know better than I do. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Okay. I'd love anybody else's opinion. I'm asking because I'm not sure I have a really good answer for it. I was baffled.
Do you want a 1 word or two? I think it's 2 words or 2-minute answer, Bruce.
You're not, come on. We know you can't do a 2-word answer. Come on.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper?
Right. I totally
That is
agree.
the answer. It is this is a human need, food and shelter. If you compare it to other hurricane markets, right, where the prices shoot up because everybody needs a house over their roof over their head. So that is very clear to me, and you should be proud of those millennials that where we thought they're just on for experiences around, that they finally actually discovered the value and the need for home ownership. So right now we have these demographics going, the millennials, they're becoming Robin Hood day traders. They follow exactly in our baby boomer footsteps to the social program. And the baby boomers aren't moving. They're sitting on 3%. Actually, if they do have a college, I have a lot of friends that their college kids all moved back home. If you look at those statistics, so I'm a little bit worried about the future and if we not have the demand all drawn forward,
right,
and come in the future.
Okay.
I did have a really great question, Paul. This one would be a little bit aimed at you. Proposition 19, if it passes, will it be grandfathered in for existing inherited properties? Will those be grandfathered in, or will those immediately be reassessed?
No, it doesn't affect anything that was that transferred prior to January 1st of 2021. By the way, I liberated the silk shirt from the closet and decided banned from wearing by Teresa, but I decided it's coming on.
If I may ride on that train, Paul, for a minute, somebody did notice and text me. So my daughter, I told her I was going to a black tie event. And so she insisted on beating up my eyes here. Just so you know, that's my daughter's contribution to the I Survived Real Estate black tie event. We wanted to get officially dressed for this. So there you go. So thank you, Paul, for getting the shirt out.
Yeah, I went silk here. I'm told that this is from 20 years ago, but I still like it. But yeah, 19 is not retroactive. So anything that's changed hands before January 1st stays under the same rules.
David, I know you have multifamily. Have you had any feedback from tenants in close quarters? Multifamily, as in not apartment buildings, but multifamily. I think you have 4. Any vacancies? Any concerns? Have you heard?
I haven't heard. Well, my tenancy has been 100% occupied, 100% paid. I've been really fortunate to keep my finger on the pulse and have a relationship with most of my tenants personally. And some of my buildings, you know, it's a relationship where people know that they're not sending a check to just some corporation. They know that whether it be my landscaper's there. Hey, I'm still every 3 months one the blower guy just to be down there to make noise, to show up. That I'm still a working entity and another person. So I think that relationship has carried over into mutual respect. And that being said, but I also know that there's quite a few people. Matter of fact, I have one of my favorite properties. I know that neighbor next door, which I just happen to be sending letters to on a regular basis over the years. I will be going down and bringing the neighbors coffee to see if they've been paying their rent or not. And you laugh. Earlier before, I was texting one of the tenants that what's that word? Oh yeah, I evicted, and they moved next door. But I'm still friends with them. And I will be finding out, it's like, hey, a lot of people don't have to pay rent. Would you be that person? And if so, I find out who's paying rent, who's not. And if that building's not creating income, at this point, those people that I've seen for the past decade in that particular building, between deferred maintenance for a decade and not getting paid. And I think the way it's managed, it's going to be a deal breaker for those landlords. But also the tenants in there aren't getting the quality that they want. But it's one of those things when you haven't had the rent raise or it's not that high, people are going to keep quiet so they don't get the rent raise. The problem is if you have a leak under the faucet, you have water damage or things like that, they don't want to call in, and it affects the property in the long term. So I think there's a lot of opportunities going forward for landlords. That's why I mentioned before. I was pointing out what opportunities do we see coming up, and I think apartments is going to be one of them. Depending, as Paul was talking about earlier, and Ben, what's going to be happening because they're going after the small guys in these arena for taxation.
Paul, I'm thinking about when the eviction moratorium in California gets lifted, and all of us landlords at that moment in time are looking around the room like, are you taking that tenant? How does this work out when the eviction moratoriums get listed and all of us mom and pop landlords were like, why are you moving? Where are you coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't think anybody does. Public policy right now is just scrambling to try to figure out next week. So we haven't, we've tried to think that far ahead, and we've tried to project to policymakers, where the dominoes fall, because you can see it coming. It's not that much of a mystery if you follow the steps and where the decision points come for both landlords and for tenants. But they're just trying to get through the next session, the next election, the next month. And, we'll figure out next year when next year comes. I do have a question for you guys that are in this space. How do you value a piece of rental property that a tenant isn't paying on and isn't going anywhere for 6 months, a year or longer? How is that going to work?
Now, I have, due to my other photography job, I got a call from a commercial real estate broker, and I said to them, I was curious why you didn't call me earlier. I thought commercial real estate is all going down, including they do apartments. It's Cush Wakefield, right? And I said, so how come you didn't call me sooner? I thought commercial real estate will be on sale and you need, drone footage. And she said, yeah, we can't sell them right now. And I said, what do you mean you can't sell them? Yeah, because none of the tenants are paying. So the owners are holding onto it, hoping that they can write off this year and show better cash flow.
So to answer your question, Paul, basically we're going to base our offers on going forward, as we always do, is how much income did it generate? And if it brought none in, those are the numbers. But I also have a friend of mine that in his 80s and has a large portfolio of commercial, and somebody in a commercial building, not residential commercial, but commercial, made him an offer, and it was a lowball offer. And he said during our conversation, you know what, that's exactly the number I would have came up with on my offer. And he's going to go back and counter offer. But out of all the offers, including some marijuana dispensaries and things like that, that are going to have a long-term wait, and if they offer it to him, he says, I'm thinking it's going to be done. So I'm realizing that, just like we've talked about in this business, if it's fair, it's fair. And if you're going to try to get out, I don't see it getting any better. And by the time you evict somebody next year, by the time you're not going to collect the money, if you're going to get 25% about that. And in the short term, the long term, you got till 2022, there's really not a solution there. And also if you're not collecting rents, you're not going to be able to do maintenance or any of that stuff. So I think it just wears people out. And by the way, a lot of people didn't keep up on their rents along the way. As rents were rising, especially in Sacramento, people were I'm going to get to that next week, and 2 years go by. And then in the last year with rent control, they haven't been able to raise them as much and to bring them up to actually where par is. And so now you can only bring them up 6%. So it's going to take a while. So between not having any rents for a prolonged period of time and only being able to bring the rents up at 6% for now, and also the possibility of not being able to turn around and when you have a turn, raise the rent. There's going to be a lot of things in play. And that's where you come in, and to find out, hey, hopefully we get rid of those certain laws that don't protect anybody. Because if you're not bringing in, as a landlord, you're not bringing any money in, you're not going to be able to continuously put money into the property. Like on a regular quarterly basis, I have a budget and I do something on the property. I painted half the apartment building 3 months ago, and then I'll paint the other half soon. If I didn't have any money coming in, I couldn't do that. I think a lot of that.
Coming from the note side, are you nervous about you're in second position. You're probably getting people who, Sean made an interesting observation. He bought his commercial building from somebody a few election cycles ago who was so freaked out, he got a 40% discount on his commercial building. I was like, I've never heard of driving for political signs. So depending on who becomes president, you're going to the opposite saying, hey, you want to sell? But is there a sense that the political outcome is going to change your business? How are you evaluating notes? You said it had come back, but it's not bothering you at all?
Well, I think you have to qualify where you're buying notes and what kind of notes and at what price. So, if you look at some hard money loans and you say, well, are you worried about your collateral and on these loans? And you say, well, how did I underwrite that loan to begin with? Well, I had a 65% loan to value on a property that if I took it back, I could rent it out and I could cover basically my payment. And I know that I have so much equity that I could turn around and sell that thing. So it's all a matter of if you bought the note right. And it's funny because I saw the question in the Q&A about the homestead exemption in California, right? Well, the first thing is that I would say to that is we don't buy in California. So, and we haven't. The reason is that when property rights and contract law no longer matter, then I'm out. Because if I don't have a rule of law and I don't have a contract that I could count on, then how can I possibly make that choice to invest? So that's number one. So I'm not nervous about California because I'm not in California. Now that doesn't really answer the guy's question though, right? So to be fair, I would say that yes, if I was sitting in second position behind a first and my second was non-performing, and with the new exemption dollar amount, I could get stripped, then yeah, I would be nervous. So I would say you'd have to take that into account in your calculation when you're looking to buy a note. So that's going to make the price of notes in California, at least the non-performing notes, for people that actually are paying attention. You know, there's a lot of dumb buyers out there, but the smart buyers are not going to pay as much for those non-performing. So I think that the key here to remember is that if you bought it right, you can weather a lot of storms. And so is we only buy non-performing seconds at a certain combined loan to value on only the unpaid principal balance. So all the arrears of interest that's not on the cake, if you just look at unpaid principal balance, we always have an equity spread that we have that's an equity protection whenever we buy, and that informs our buying decision and the price that we're willing to pay for something. Now, the market kind of froze up a little bit when COVID first came in, and the industry, like the buyer stopped buying and the seller stopped selling for about a month or maybe 45 days just to reevaluate. But what my point was is that the market is back and it's functioning. There's buyers, there's sellers, there's people agreeing on prices. In the single family market, there's price discovery on the valuations. So, you know, for the most part, that part of the market is functioning. Is there some trepidation still? Sure, of course. We have those, you know, we have 6 million loans in forbearance on first trust deeds. So a little bit of trepidation out there still. Mm-hmm.
Pops, you actually had somebody say, express a similar sentiment when it came to contract law, which is definitely an issue. I would hate to be a servicer in California when they tied the pandemic and allowed the pandemic to be controlled at the local level, so the local municipalities could dictate it was still a state of emergency, so things like evictions and whatnot could happen. How can you be a loan servicer at the national level and get down to the county level, city level of every state? I mean, that's insane. So you had, I forget who you were talking to, was talking about that. The
interview that we did.
Yeah, I don't know if it was an interview or a phone call where you, yes, maybe it was. Who was it, and what did they say?
I don't remember the gentleman's name, but it had to do with to where somebody could call you up 2 days after funding and basically say, you know, my business has been affected by the coronavirus, and so I can't make you a payment. And that would be the end of the discussion. There would be a 1-year moratorium on the payment, and the loan would be extended. And this was legislation that didn't get passed, but it was suggested. You know, you answered a pretty pointed question early on, and I want to answer it better. You asked me why I left California, and I said because of Sandy. Sandy was concerned about our safety and in California, and so honoring her, I didn't disagree with that. But for business, it's really important, and Kathleen just said that, if I don't know the rules of engagement on how the rules are made, it makes me very uncomfortable. And so that was one of the main reasons that I thought, you know, business-wise, I would like to, I feel a lot more comfortable in how Florida is run that way. And you know, I'm a big fan of migration. And I think because of all of this, Florida is going to be getting migration of money from California, and New York and New Jersey money and people. So that's why I'm here, because of those two very important things.
Yeah, when they have a Bruce Norris show up, you're not needing a job, you just immediately become a consumer. So that is a very different perspective than California. You end every I Survive Real Estate with a question, and I would like to ask that question and have each panelist answer that.
Well, we didn't go over that, but I would like to ask, I think this is how I've asked it before, is there anything that you are very concerned about or very excited about, and anything that you would like to see change? Is that close enough, Aaron? Okay.
Close enough. Let's start from the northern part of the state and we'll work our way down. David, you're up.
Well, being in California and not going too far too fast, I do have concerns the way they're reaching out. Instead of sticking within the budget, they're reaching out to create money taxation. It seems every time, I don't know if because I'm in that position, but every time it seems they're reaching into the back pocket of the small landlords rather than trying to figure something out. And they're, like most of us, I heard this evening, where a lot of us are trying to create ADUs, trying to create homes. Problem is, when you talk working with the city, the counties, they're just saying, we'd love that. And we'd love to do that for you. We just can't, we're not. And especially when they're always looking, we're going to add another fee. I'm getting fees for, I get these letters, I have the privilege of doing an annual self-inspection on my properties, and I get to send them a letter. I also get to send them a check for that. So I'm doing all the work and I'm sending them a check. And if they're reaching into our pocket, how long can we continue to pay for some deficit they're creating and still not create homes? So I'm getting more. It was great to hear Paul and Ben might get more involved, because I do have concerns and they don't solve the problem. And I realized when I came up with that tagline this year, because I have seen a lot of people that are trying to stay in their homes or trying to get in homes. And there's a lot of, as we see throughout, as I heard earlier, throughout California, there's a lot of homeless. And there's a lot of people that just are working, or are the working homeless, and trying to avoid that. What can we do? So that's my curiosity.
Okay, Christina, you're up.
My concern really, because my background is first in rentals and then in value adds. My concern is I don't, as a landlord, I don't own any rental units in California anymore. I don't want to continue to deal with the legislation and the rent control and the moratoriums on evictions. And, I don't want David said it really well. If you're not going to get paid well enough to be able to maintain your own unit, then it's a problem to continue to maintain valuable units. I don't want that. I don't want to fight with my tenants, and I don't want that kind of control. And rent control has been getting, the statewide rent control, not necessarily that unreasonable for us as landlords, but it does mean that we have to be, again, more diligent and more aggressive. And, we can only evict under certain circumstances. And, I've owned enough units, in California where, I had this lady who had 2 large German Shepherds in a building that I allowed animals in, and her German Shepherds ripped up the carpet, and the health department got called. She called the health department, and I had to replace it because it was a health hazard. I was responsible for it because I was the landlord, and it had nothing to do with that she had created damage in the unit from her animals. It's just an example. That's just an example of the amount of rights that landlords have versus tenants have in California. And that's my uncomfortable point. And so I don't have any rental units in California.
Okay.
Kathleen. You're on mute, by the way. Sorry. The joys.
Sorry. I know. I said you're going to be sorry that you asked, or you might be.
Oh.
So I think you have to take into perspective that I come from a family of immigrants who escaped communism and came to this country with nothing and built a life here. And so I was raised with a certain perspective, and I am very concerned for the direction of our country. I think that if California is any kind of an example, and this could go both directions, if we have one party rule, things can get seriously out of hand. And so the pendulum swings too far one direction or the other. I know that California is being held out as an example of one of those directions of pendulum swing. And I really fear for the rule of law. I feel fear for contract law. I fear for my own family's safety. So there's a lot to be concerned about, I think, right now. There's a lot at stake right now. With that being said, I believe in our country, and I think that we are very strong, and I think that we'll overcome whatever difficulties that we may end up having to go through. But I'm not looking forward to that process. So that's it. I'm concerned. And so I'll continue to be vigilant and watch numbers and do the best I can to help other people navigate. and to help my family navigate. And that's it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Derek. Hopefully you still have clothes on. You went dark. I can't tell.
He's pouring another glass of wine.
Well, he's on mute. Lenska, you go next.
Okay. For me, I'm pretty positive about or to own a piece of land or real estate. First of all, Germany's home ownership rate is 33%. And we have been kind of a socialistic country for a while. So if this is a precursor to what maybe America could go down to, where we have 70% renters, now are the Germans happy people? Yes, but obviously it's not the American dream why we came over. And I'm with Kathleen here, 30 years ago, I came over from Germany. I did have $10,000. I brought that with me. So, and also build a real estate portfolio. I'm now super concerned. I'm actually more concerned about how this whole debt will be paid back. Not even gold is moving right now. So the entire fundamentals of any economy right now is in question, and how the central banks and the Fed, I thought we have three arms of the United States, but it looks like we have a fourth one, and that is the Fed. So the Fed is making policy. So for me, I see it in a bigger picture to where we're going a little bit long term. Now that we had no job growth, or we had job growth, but we only added service workers. So we didn't invest in AI and all those really high paying jobs. And now, if you're a panda hugger, we really need to watch out for China. So, and China already has digital currency. So privacy and big tech, there's a lot of stuff I'm concerned about, but about the general well-being and the wealth of the average American.
Okay, got it. Paul, you're next.
So I'm going to go on the hopeful side here. And what I'm hoping for is after this election, after the next couple of months, that people find politics boring again, and not, the centerpiece of, of their entertainment diet, and stop paying attention to it on a daily basis, and that we come off of that so that we're able to have boring, pragmatic conversations that lead to some kind of problem solving. Because the alternative is what we've been suffering through, which is public policy debates as a performance art, in which the sides are using the topics not for problem solving, but for building a personal brand or building a next career that is more entertainment based than it is, the real hard work of building a better society that makes more sense. The questions we have to answer in California about housing, people don't like the answers to them. And because the answers are, it's going to take 10, 15 years to fix the problems that we spent a generation creating, because we have to build the housing. We have to open up the lanes of supply. And I'm sorry, but we messed up this generation. The young workers, who are even making a decent income and are having trouble understanding how to ever afford a house, we're just not going to fix it for them. But we hope we can fix it for the folks that come 10, 15 years down the line if we do things right. But without that patience, that willingness to put that effort forward and understand that it's not going to be pretty for a little while, it becomes a lot tougher. So we need politics to be a little more boring and for people to be a little more patient. And I think we can get a lot done.
Okay, I'm going to say I believe we are going to innovate out of our way out of this pandemic. And I think we're going to learn some really interesting things. I think that we could see a return of kindness and decency in the next 12 months. I really hope so. I'm really interested in our industry getting more savvy. I think Wall Street entering in at all levels of our industry is going to force us, Main Street real estate investors, to get more savvy. It's going to be about being data driven, getting more sophisticated with automation, and it's possible. It's one of the reasons I jumped onto Property Radar, and that's what I get to work with the media. I get to advocate for our industry nationwide, helping small businesses disrupt disruptors. It's possible. I'm here for it. I'm excited. Pops.
Aaron? Oh.
Yo, David, go ahead.
I think what you just said is really important. Matter of fact, not being that technical, I was with Sean up in Truckee having lunch the other day before you guys were and did your presentation for the club, and I see the value of getting out of my comfort zone and getting better at comprehending data and find out what it does. I think when I've tried to do it in the past, and it overwhelms me. And I've been able to start to learn that if I can just pick a few pieces out and use it to my best interest, best knowledge, as we were talking about earlier, it's having the numbers, having the knowledge. And so facilitating and using the data, using the tools. Matter of fact, one of the things I should have done years ago, I took a great calculator class with Bill Tan not long ago, and I should have taken it 20 years ago. And one of the things Paul was asking, how do we evaluate the properties going forward next year? And I have more tools if I keep practicing how to offer. And actually, more importantly, I want to make fair offers. I'm not trying to make lowball offers, but I also need to realize that if you've only brought in 40% of the rents last year, this is what the property can pay. And they know that, as I would know that if I was in that position. So rather than say, this is what I think it's worth, I can be able to calculate, this is what it's worth and why, and try to explain it to them in a fair manner, and what it was worth before the pandemic.
One of the things that Sean says is Main Street needs to focus on things that don't scale. Wall Street does not invest in your soccer teams. They don't live in your neighborhood. It's a very different feeling. I just really believe in Main Street, and it's up to us, especially all of us on this call that are leaders in this space, to do better and help our network rise above it. There's a place for them. I don't think iBuyers are going away. We're going to have that across the board as they fully integrate and magically lose millions of dollars in the process. But I think we learned during COVID how sustainable they really are. They picked up and left, whether it was the Wall Street hard money or the iBuyers, they packed up and left, and we're susceptible to that. Main Street was here to stay. So I'm excited about what we do. I'm passionate about what we do. So I'm excited for next year. I think there's going to be some interesting opportunity and some innovation that's going to be coming out. So I'm excited. So Pops, we are past time.
Yep, I'll be very brief. First of all, thank you, Aaron, for dreaming this event up. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm actually very happy that you have the position you have with Sean, and that you have such a national scope in mind and backing Main Street. I think you're going to do some amazing things. My theme or my ending is the same, because it's really sincerely baffled me why we don't land here. But my God, it's time. Every elected official, don't stop acting like a Democrat or a Republican, and please act like an American and do what's best for our country. That changes everything. And I know it's possible. It's interesting. You said about the coronavirus, you thought that might be a 9/11 event. I saw that after 9/11. I was at an Angel game, and the national anthem, usually it's always played before the game starts. And usually it's people stand, but right after 9/11, 40,000 people stood and sang. And it was a very emotional thing, because you looked around and you went, wow, we are not different today. We are just Americans. And boy, I hope we can spark that amongst ourselves.
All right. Well, that is tonight. And that's where we'll end it. So some behind the scenes stuff, the link that you used today to log in will be good for next week. We're expecting probably a lot more people. I have a feeling that we are going to be able to announce that we have crossed the $1 million mark. If you have people that want to log in, it's not too late. They can go to I Survive Real Estate, work with Joey. We hope to see you half dressed next week. Maybe we can have a drinking game. Every time you say real estate, you take a shot. I don't know. But thank you for hanging out. I mean, we had a great audience the entire time. Thank you, speakers, for covering so much great stuff today. This was amazing. So
it was great.
Yeah.
half dressed and in full spirits.
Have such a great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for
Okay.
putting this together. Thank you, Bruce.
Good night, you guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a lovely
Bye.
evening.
Thank you for tuning in to I Survive Real Estate 2020. To watch the full video in its entirety or to learn more about speakers and sponsors, please go to isurviverealestate.com. And be sure to tune in next week for more I Survive Real Estate 2020. Thank you.